The public hearing of the Joint Committee on Education is now convened. I'm State Senator Jason Lewis, the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Education, and to my left is our House Chair of the committee, Representative Denise Garlick, and we are also joined by Representative Howard. Nice to see you. And we may have some other committee members participating online, virtually, or joining us in person as we move forward with the hearing. Today's hearing is, we will be taking testimony on all the bills pending before the committee on topics including college and career readiness, technology and data, transportation, rural and regional schools, and deaf and hard of hearing children. We do have quite a large number of people signed up to testify either in person or remotely. And we really appreciate everyone's participation in the public hearing process. Again, whether you're here in person or going to participate virtually. We also encourage you to submit written testimony if you haven't already. That's a very effective way to communicate with myself and Representative Garlick, our staff, and all the committee members. We do have a significant number of people signed up, so we are asking you to please limit your testimony to 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I know that sounds like a very short amount of time, but I can assure you that you can effectively communicate, your position on a particular bill or bills, in a succinct manner, and that has the biggest impact on on the committee members. The way we're going to conduct the hearing is everyone who's here in person, we're going to take your testimony first. So we will go through all the bills where there is somebody signed up to testify in person, and then after that, we will then go back to the beginning of the agenda to take testimony from everyone who has signed up to testify virtually. We do have some special requests in terms of accommodating accessibility needs. So we're going to, at 2 p.m., we are going to take all testimony on Senate Bill 316, which is an act relative to best management practices for wireless in schools and public institutions of higher education. So just ask for your understanding and patience in advance. When we get to 2 p.m., we'll switch over to all of the testimony on that bill. If you are here in person and you do want to testify, you have to have either signed up in advance or signed up when you arrived at the hearing just outside. So if you haven't, please do so with one of the committee staff. Let's see. Oh, we only call folks to testify once. So if you want to share feedback with the committee on more than one bill, you should do so at the time you are called to testify. A copy of the agenda for today's hearing is available online on the Hearings and Events page of the Massachusetts Legislature website, and we do try to conform to that agenda while recognizing similar bills together. It is generally the practice of this committee and other committees to take legislators out of turn when they arrive. So I do see a number of legislators here in person, and I think we have one or two virtually. So once we begin the hearing, I will recognize those folks to testify first. The hearing is being live streamed on the legislature's website, and the recording will be posted shortly after the conclusion of the hearing. We ask folks to please mute silence your cell phones if you're here in person, and to be sure to mute yourself if you are virtual, and then you should unmute, of course, once we call you to testify. If you have any questions or concerns during the hearing, you could certainly talk to any of the committee staff. To my right is Emily Reynolds, and this is actually her first day as our new legislative director in my office. So welcome, Emily. throwing you right into the lion's den. So great to have you with us. And then we also have the House staff of the committee, Zach Schwartz, the research director, Andrew Epifanio. Sorry, Andrew, I always pronounce your name wrong. I'm going to get it right one of these days. Down there at the end, and Siona Chernoff, also a committee researcher. And I think that that covers it. All right. So without further ado, we're going to move to, again, the bills where we have folks signed up to testify in person. And then we'll go back to start over to take virtual testimony. All right, so I think in terms of the legislators, I think Senator Oliveira and Rep. Doherty, were you going to testify together? Okay, so why don't you come up and testify? And then we'll go to Representative Scanlon, and Senator Payano, and then Representative Lipic-Arabedian. Did I get everybody? Okay. Thank you.
The 2-minute rule also applies to legislators, does it?
Yes, it does.
Well, if I leave anything out, I'll write to you.
You know where to find us. Yeah.
So thank you very much for taking us out of turn. It's greatly appreciated to the chairs, members of the committee, staff persons. I offer my testimony in support of H466 and S338, an act to promote inclusion of American Sign Language in the Commonwealth's public schools. Current law says that ASL may be offered at the discretion of the local school board. Our recommendation is that the law should say shall be required offered as an option in a modern languages curriculum. Having an ASL class made available as part of the curriculum and fostering those skills will allow greater understanding between people who are deaf or hard of hearing and hearing people. It will foster a society where people who are deaf or hard of hearing can thrive and be supported, not just fit in. The normalization of sign language education and its use would particularly benefit marginalized groups of people, such as those living with a communication disability or a disabling condition. General education classrooms have become more diverse, with a variety of disabilities who are mainstreamed, and even as hearing persons, every student would benefit immensely from learning to sign. ASL is a great secondary language for students to learn if they are anxious or fearful of public speaking. Students with special needs often experience difficulty with expressive language and verbal ability. Sign language gives these students access to communication while strengthening their ability to produce expressive speech. And finally, a growing number of children are diagnosed with autism and are often taught sign language at a very young age. Including sign language in the education classroom, having classmates and siblings equipped with this skill can have amazing social and academic benefits all around for all students. The most effective way to ensure that as many people as possible are able to communicate in sign language would be to require that sign language be included in high school language curriculum, offered for credit, and be optional for students. I thank you for your time. I have no idea where I am on the 2 minutes, but I have concluded my presentation, and I learned to sign ASL, so that's A-S-L. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lewis, Chair Garlick, and members of the committee. I'm not going to reiterate since I only have 2 minutes, but I'm here to testify on the same 2 bills that Rep. Doherty just mentioned, but also on 2 other bills that I'm filing today as well. An act expanding high school student access to earned industry credits, S334, and also an act relative to student transportation, Senate Bill 330 and House Bill 570 that I filed with my good friend Adam Scanlon. But focusing in on the ASL, including as part of the curriculum for course credit to meet the language requirement, I think is consistent what we're already doing in public higher ed. In public higher ed institutions here in the Commonwealth, ASL is seen an accredited language that you can use to meet your graduation requirements. That extension should be made through the K through 12 side, just as Representative Doherty had mentioned before, because it's particularly helpful for students with disabilities, particularly those with autism or have some verbal issues, that they can actually go forward and have a language to meet that graduation requirement. I'm so happy to see the hearing today is also signing with us to allow for folks with hearing impairment to actually read. But I also, it's something personal for me, because in my district in Western Massachusetts, I have the Willie Ross School for the Hard of Hearing, and I invite any member of this committee to come and take a visit to the school and see what they're doing in the classroom, but also what they're providing. They are in desperate need right now for employees that know how to sign. And having the ability to introduce more high schools, more communities, more school districts with ASL can help to close that workforce shortage gap that we're seeing in so many institutions that provide services to students with hearing disabilities. So with that, I will keep my comments brief on that. I will make a plug for my last bill, an act relative to student transportation. I think every school district in the Commonwealth has witnessed double-digit rising increases when they have a private transportation provider. I was on a board in Western Massachusetts for the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative for over a decade that did transportation in-house through a collaborative model. It was 7 school districts coming together, providing transportation, providing economy of scale, but also better control. And we were also better able to keep down those cost increases from going forward. This bill would create a commission to look at the possibility of furthering educational collaboratives in order to provide transportation services to help contain those costs. With that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions that any committee member might have.
Okay. Yes, Rep. Howard.
Good afternoon, Rep. Doherty and Senator Oliveira. On the ASL, your bill, does also apply universal sign language in that bill as well? No, both bills, not just ASL, but what about universal sign language? Because we have, students that learning the English language. What about the universal sign language? Does it also apply in this bill?
I don't believe that's included in our bill right now, Rep. Doherty, but we'd be happy and amenable to work with the committee and with your office in order to include it, to provide those opportunities as well. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, only that there are a couple of amendments that we need to make to the brief bill that we have presented in order for greater clarity, and certainly what you recommended, Rep, would be considered to be included in that as well. So thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rep. Howard. And I would only add that both Rep. Doherty and I are recovering school committee members. It's been a long recovery process, so we understand the issues that school districts face, especially when you're implementing curriculum and changes, so we wanted to be sensitive of that as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you both very much. Appreciate your leadership on this, and Senator Oliveira, you get the prize for most number of bills, I think, before the committee today.
You're welcome. Less than 2 minutes.
No, you did great. All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Sorry, Rep. Peace, sorry about that. Did you have a comment or a question?
Actually, more of a comment. Just could you please make sure when we're asking the questions that we're speaking into the microphone so we can hear them out here? Please. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I thank you for that. And I should use this opportunity to recognize Representative Peace and also Representative Ferguson, who are both members of the Education Committee who are with us for this hearing remotely. So thank you both for being with us. All right. So again, the plan is we're going to go to Representative Scanlon, then Senator Payano, Representative Lippert-Garabedian, and then we're going to go, we have Representative Cruz, followed by Representative Reyes, who will also be testifying. And then after that, we will move to House Bill 592, Senate Bill 256 for in-person testimony.
Hello.
Hi.
Also recovering former school committee member, pre-COVID though, so. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee and staff. It's a pleasure to be before you. My number one priority in the legislature since day one has been fighting for avenues and pathways for our students in our schools to be able to seek career and workforce development opportunities at every level, My father was a Mason, and he graduated from Tri-County Regional Vocational School. And since then, he was able to build a small business and has continued that for over 30 years. And that's the American dream that I see, and I think a lot of you see happening in our own backyards, in our own communities. But anyways, I wanted to come and support Chair Roy's bill, H592, as well as its Senate counterpart, S256. And this bill would create and expand student pathways to success. And when it comes to creating college and career pathway programs, I see this as an opportunity to prepare students for success in higher education and the workforce. What this bill seeks to do is adopt a North Star goal, an all-encompassing goal, if you will, that will ensure that all students have access to key elements of pathways, college credit, work-based learning opportunities, industry-recognized credentials, and dedicated career counseling. We do that by bringing people together, as this legislature often does. In this case, we would bring various stakeholders together to adopt these goals, and also ensure that the Workforce Skills Cabinet remains a permanent body and charge it with a number of tasks to oversee and work towards accomplishing these goals. We also know that industry-recognized credentials are very important, as they are, when students receive them, are more likely to graduate from high school on time, attain an associate's degree, and graduate from a community college, and enroll in a four-year higher education institution. We're very lucky to live in Massachusetts because of our investments in the community college system. We're very excited about that, and I know this committee had a big hand in that. This legislation would stand a strong signal by giving districts an additional $1,000 in funding for every high school student that earns a credential that is aligned with workforce demands as determined by the Department of Labor and Workforce Developments. And as I often say, every student at every high school should have the opportunity to pursue a vocational program. And as we know, and as I've said before, vocational education has exceeded the number of seats for many years now, and the current policy structure makes it difficult for greater numbers of high schools to offer these opportunities to their students. This legislation would remove those barriers and make it easier for all high schools across the state to set up vocational education programs that give their students high-dosage, work-based learning opportunities in specific occupations to position them to enter the workforce and secure a good job in high-growth fields. It also expands the After Dark program, which is a huge component in vocational education. The last thing that I'll point out is the growth of the Innovation Pathways program. And for those that don't know or are familiar with that program, is it gives students coursework in high-demand industries such as manufacturing, healthcare, environmental studies, business studies, and it allows students in those types of programs to sort of link up with an employer. This program started with $600,000 in my first budget cycle in 2021. And now the program is funded at almost $6 million, and hundreds of students are participating in this program across the Commonwealth thanks to this committee's leadership. The state needs to embed an incentive in the Chapter 70 formula to provide funding to districts based on the number of students who participate in pathway programs. This legislation would create such an incentive for students who participated in early college innovation career pathways or STEM tech career academy programs. Lastly, I would say this bill is a great complement to the omnibus vocational bill, H538, that you heard about earlier this year. And I really welcome anyone that's willing to come to the table to give our students more pathways and more opportunities to join our workforce. And I thank this committee for its leadership and Jeff Roy's leadership.
Thank you, Representative Scanlon. Any questions? All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Senator Payano, welcome.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you, Chair Lewis, Chair Garlick, for the opportunity to speak in front of you for S343, an act establishing an education to career data center. I will say, since several of our colleagues, when they testified, they mentioned that they were former school committee members, I'll say I'm also a former school committee member. And, you know, one of the memories that inspired me and moved me to run and join elected public service was being in high school. Freshman year of high school, I was sitting at the front of the auditorium at our freshman assembly, and I remember turning around and looking at all the students that were there. Auditorium was filled, standing room only, and the energy, the passion, and sort of the hope that everyone had as you're entering, you know, high school. Fast forward 4 years later, again, I'm sitting in the front row, and I turn around, and almost half of my peers were missing. Empty chairs everywhere. And I remember thinking, where did everyone go? Now, I graduated a little bit over 20 years ago. School systems have improved a lot since then. But according to DESE, we still have thousands of students that are dropping out of high school every year at a rate of 2.1%. We all know that not all students are affected equally. African American students are dropping out at a rate of 2.8%, Latinos 4.3%, and limited English proficiency learners at 7.8%. Without a high school diploma, these students are limited in their academic and professional opportunities, and will find it difficult to succeed in a world that increasingly requires more education credentials. This bill aims to establish an education to career data center within the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security. This center will serve as a crucial resource for gathering, managing, and disseminating vital data related to education and career development. The centralized education and career data system is designed to provide a comprehensive view of an individual's educational journey. It charts transition from early education to K-12, higher education, ultimately into the workforce. This will allow us to better understand the pathway individuals take throughout their learning and career development. I will say, I remember speaking to administrators at my school, talking about the same thing 12, 13 years ago, and one of the things that they had a difficulty, you know, doing something like this is they didn't have the resources to take something like this on, which is one of the reasons why I believe that it should be centralized. The centralized system will develop protocols for evaluating strategic initiatives. By collecting and analyzing data, we can measure the effectiveness of educational programs and workforce development efforts. This information will guide decision makers and help us invest in initiatives that truly make a difference. The center would be led by an executive director who will report to the Secretary of EOTSS and be governed by a 15-member board. The funding for the center would come from state appropriations, federal grants, as well as other contributions from public agencies. The creation of this system is a testament to our dedication to making informed, data-driven decisions that will positively impact the lives of our students and strengthen our workforce. I want to thank all of you for your time and for your consideration in this matter.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Payano. We definitely noted in the course of your testimony there that you were sitting in the front row, both in the first day and the last day. So
Thank you.
a very dedicated and eager student, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. I want to also recognize Representative McGonigal, who's with us. Good to see you. Nice to have you with us. All right, Representative Lipic-Arabedian's next.
Good afternoon, Chairs Garlick and Lewis and members of the committee. Thanks so much for taking me out of turn. I just wanted to bring your attention to two bills that I filed with great colleagues. One, the senator just spoke about, which is House 530 and Senate 343, an act establishing an education to career data center. I'm a former teacher. I worked as an education attorney for the Commonwealth. I also took sign language in high school, so unrelated to these two bills, but this bill really comes in part from my experience working for the Executive Office of Education, where we were doing a lot of data sharing agreements across state agencies. and looking at leading states that do it more seamlessly and with greater intentionality, and recognizing that they have dedicated executive branch offices that are helping to facilitate those conversations, ensuring legal compliance and making sure that the investments we're making at a state or local level or regional are actually having their intended effects by being able to analyze the data that we're already collecting. I'm glad to be working with Representatives Cruz and Senator Payano on that bill. The other bill that I wanted to speak about today, and I know you'll hear testimony on this from experts and advocates and practitioners, is the Student and Educator Data Privacy Act, House 532, which I filed with Chair Jeff Roy, and Senate 280 with Senator Feingold. This is a bill that this committee gave favorable review to last session, and I really appreciated that and hope that it will receive a similar result this session as well. As you have likely seen, according to the Data Quality Campaign, in the last decade, 45 states have passed 149 laws around student data privacy. Our state is one of the only states left that hasn't actually put into our statutory framework expectations about how student data should be collected and preserved and protected. And that's, to the detriment of districts and educators and students, where we haven't set consistent guidelines within our statutory framework for how the third-party providers and vendors that are contracting with school districts are using student data. So we have nothing in our state laws, unlike 40-plus other states, that say you can't use the data to target advertising to students. You can't use the data to create and amass a student profile that exists past the point of your contract. And so the bill, as you all probably remember from last session, not only establishes these protections, but also then provides leverage and support to districts and individual schools by ensuring that there's statewide leadership at DESE, as well as dedicated professionals in every district to keep an eye on the importance of protecting this data. So thank you so much for your time. I hope to see favorable reviews on both of these bills, and I appreciate it.
Hang for 1 second.
Sure.
Thank you, Representative. Very much appreciate your leadership on the student and educator data privacy. Totally agree with you. I think it's an issue that is long overdue for us to address. So I'm looking forward to working with you and our colleagues, hopefully on that bill this session. I was wondering, I know that DESE, I think it was last week or the week before, they rolled out a new website. I don't know if you had seen this. They're calling it the E2C Hub. It sounds to me similar to what the bill that you and Senator Payano are also advocating for, in terms of connecting all of the data for students going through high school and then into post-high school. Is that right?
Yes,
do you know how it compares to what you're...
Yes, I think it's a really great, so again, a lot of this work is happening. Mm-hmm. So in part, that this particular bill that we filed would codify work that is ongoing, which is really helpful. It also would take the role of the connector of all the longitudinal data that we're collecting, both at workforce level and education data, again, within parameters of federal and state privacy law, and put it in a dedicated office that's sort of, with an executive director, that with a board where each of the secretaries and commissioners for the respective agencies are meeting and advising on how this data is going to be used when a district requests something or a legislative request comes in to better understand a line item that we continuously fund, and is it actually resulting in the impact that we hope it does with the revenue from our tax dollars that we're submitting to it. One thing to note is that the Data Hub currently is being funded through federal SDLS grant money. And that is going to finish off in 2025. We heard about this at the symposium the other week that we did here in the building. So it's currently got a dedicated funding stream, but DESE and Massachusetts have been told by the U.S. Department of Education that we will not be eligible for the next round of funding because they want to give it to states that haven't received a grant like this in the past. So we know that there is actually a moment in the near future when we're going to want to continue this work. And actually, so the bill is sort of well-timed to consider that, of what will we do long-term when it's, the federal investment isn't there to support the data center any longer.
Great. Okay, that's very helpful.
Sure.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right. So we've got a couple legislators with us on virtually, so I'm going to take their testimony, and then we'll come back to open for the public here in person. So Representative Cruz, I believe you're with us.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Lewis, Chair Garlick, and the distinguished members of the Joint Committee on Education for taking me out of turn. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to testify today in support of two pieces of legislation that I've filed. The first is H530, which you have heard from my dear colleagues, Representative Lippert-Garabedian and Senator Payano on, and the other is H44, an act to expand the use of career and academic plans that I filed with State Representative Estela Reyes. And I will be brief and succinct on these, as I know that there are many folks waiting for time. So the first bill is H530, which you've heard about. It would codify into law and really set a vision as well for the centralization of an education career data system that would prioritize cross-agency collaboration, data sharing, embedding safeguards for privacy and data, and it would also foster the strategic exchange of that data with local partners and to allow for the impact of our state investments to be evaluated when it comes to both education, workforce development and training, but most importantly of all, as I've advocated for this bill, it will also ensure that we have an equitable way to monitor the progress of our state investments in these critical areas. And by passing this bill, we would make our Commonwealth a national leader with respect to data-connected policies and practices, accountability, transparency, and in our ability to conduct things like equity audits. As a policymaker, I know that when I'm requesting data from agencies to better inform policies that I'd like to devise, that this is crucial. And as someone who does hold the dual role of being a state representative and as a school committee member, I know that this ability to have rich, robust, and highly vetted data will strengthen our ability to track our investments and produce policies that lead to more equitable outcomes for students, families, and communities, while also enhancing the competitiveness of our workforce. As a school board member, I'm still regularly using data at the local level with respect to our tight budgets to think about how we can maximize efficiencies, but also to understand the effectiveness of what we're doing. But to have the ability to do this at scale when it comes to state investment, especially as we think about new sources of revenue that have come in, this itself will lend and trickle down to municipalities, being able to more strongly be able to create greater access of opportunity and equity for all of our students. And Senator, I'm so thankful that you raised up the Education and Career Data Hub, as I was planning on doing that myself, as I think of no more prominent example of the importance of this cross-collaboration within our Commonwealth, as we think about just one key example, that particular center being able to develop a study on the impacts of licensure on educators of color. I know that it is a priority of our Commonwealth and this particular committee to do all that we can to try to help the state reach the goal of 25% educator diversity by 2030. And that's not going to be possible if we don't have a deep understanding of what's happening within the workforce and the investments that we've made. And this particular legislation not only lends itself to that particular issue, but to all workforce development and education connected initiatives. So with that, I do humbly request that this bill be given strong consideration for a favorable report. And I'll quickly just shift gears to the other bill that I wanted to speak to, which is H444 that I filed with my dear colleague, Representative Reyes. And this particular legislation centers around the use of career and academic planning tools. And in this particular case, one known as MyCap. And this particular legislation would require that all public schools ensure that our students are engaging with high quality systems and that we have a dedicated college and career counseling system that allows our students to develop individualized plans on a digital platform by the year 2026, 2027 school year. And I just want to quickly talk to the equity of MyCap and systems like it being used at scale. Currently, the propensity and the use of these high quality systems for guidance are being predominantly used in more affluent, more white communities. And in our gateway cities, our rural communities that don't have these particular systems, they're not being utilized. And the difference in outcomes is that we still have students who are in the 20th century when it comes to the use of guidance in our school districts to inform our students' individualized pathways. And then for our more advantaged students, they have at the cusp the most innovative tools to be able to get intentional guidance. So as I think about racial equity in our Commonwealth and when it comes to public education, and these particular types of platforms that have been supported by, the use of them has been supported by the Association of School Counselors, by MBAE, and so many other educational organizations, it's because that they understand that our guidance systems need to be reformed, that we need to create that equity of access to opportunity, and systems like MyCap. What they do for our students is they put them on a rich journey of self-discovery, intentionality, and integration that doesn't currently exist across all of our communities. And I do think that MyCap and systems like it are also complementary to other community-based organizations that are focused on college and career readiness, and it ensures that there's that collaboration happening as well. And if I could just leave you with a brief story and anecdote about this, Senator, and Chair Garlick, I want you to think about the profile of a high school graduate that doesn't have MyCap. They're seeing their guidance counselors in a gateway city maybe 1 or 2 times. I saw this firsthand with one of my mentees, Kendall. Kendall spent 7 years getting guidance and advice that was stuck in the 20th century. All he wanted to do was go into a union when he graduated from high school and to be a laborer. But the career and academic planning that he was doing wasn't translating to that. And when I looked at his resume for the last 7 years, I saw as he meandered through opportunities that he had and really struggled to find himself. Last week, he was officially starting as an apprentice with the laborers because of my intervention and my ability to help him find a program that was relevant for him. But that should have been afforded to him the day that he walked across the stage at high school and not 7 years after his graduation. And this is the work that we have to do in our Commonwealth as we try to recover from this pandemic to ensure that all of our students have equitable access to opportunity. So I thank you for your consideration of both of these bills and for taking me out of turn this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Representative Cruz. Really appreciate your sharing your insights and wisdom with us. Representative Reyes, I think you're with us also remotely. Representative Reyes, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was playing with. Good afternoon, Chair Garlick, Chair Lewis, and esteemed member of the committee. Thank you for taking me out of turn. I'm in support of H 444 and an act to expand the use of careers in academic plans. This bill will ensure all high school students across Massachusetts participate in MyCap by 2026. MyCap, My Career and Academic Plan, is a whole school system that allows students to develop individualized college and career plans on a digital platform with this assistance of a counselor. This plan allows students to be the drivers on their education by connecting the courses they enroll in with their college and career interests. MyCap is designed to begin as early as the 6th grade. While some Massachusetts school systems already have functioning college and career counseling programs, others do not for numerous reasons. A student on the 4th Access District has shown great success when offered college counseling programs such as early college programs and insurance counseling in the school eliminate the disparity household by household. Thank you for your time and your consideration in this bill.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. All right, and welcome Representative Worrells with us. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. All right, so I think we've covered all the legislators, and again, thanks for everyone's patience in allowing us to take their testimony first. We are now, I think we'll be able to get through the in-person testimony for House 592, Senate 256, an act to create and expand student pathways to success. So we'll take the testimony of those who are here in person. I'll call you in one moment, and then we'll be around 2 o'clock. At that point, we will move to take all the testimony on the wireless bill, Senate 316. All right, so first up is the folks from the National Parents Union. So I see Carrie Rodrigues. Carrie, good to see you. Patricia Parrott and Emily Veloza. And then next up will be Tanya Metlak and Ed Lambert.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm here today as Matthew's mom, also known as Carrie Rodriguez, but Matthew is a 10th grade student at the SEAM Collaborative in Stoneham. I'm also Miles and David's mom, a 5th grader at the Harold Wyman Elementary and a 6th grader at the Joyce Middle School in Woburn. I also have the honor of being the president of the National Parents Union. I'm here today with 2 brand new parent leaders from Massachusetts Parents United from Chelsea who are participating for the very first time today. We are here to offer our wholehearted support for an act to create and expand student pathways to success. This bill represents a monumental step forward in ensuring that our children have access to a bright and promising future. Education should lead to economic mobility. This bill actualizes that goal by providing real opportunities to connect learning to ambition in our state's high schools. The core of this legislation embodies our collective commitment to providing every student in Massachusetts, regardless of their background, with the tools and opportunities they need to succeed in the modern world. As a parent, I've witnessed firsthand the challenges our children face in their academic journey, as I am with my 10th grader right now, and I believe that this bill holds the key to addressing these challenges head-on. What impresses me most about this bill is its comprehensive approach to education. It encompasses all the foundational policy initiatives required to vastly expand the availability of high-quality college and career pathway programs. It's designed with the intention of bridging the equity gaps that persist in our educational system and providing more students with opportunities for improved economic mobility. This is not just about creating pathways for a privileged few. It's about opening doors for all. While in Washington, D.C. on Friday with Secretary Cardona, he himself expressed his excitement and support for this incredible work happening in Massachusetts, calling it an example for the nation to follow and in alignment with the President's Raise the Bar effort. I urge all of you to support an act to create and expand student pathways to success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Patricia Parrott. I am here before you today not only as a mother, but someone who deeply understands the profound impact of creating more intentional pathways to career and college within our schools. I am here to share my unwavering support for the idea that learning kids engage in today is directly connected to the future our kids will have tomorrow. In a world where the choices we make now can shape our entire future, it is crucial that students have the opportunity to explore interests and passions in a way that directly prepares them for what lies ahead. This is what creating intentional pathways in high school is all about. The high school journey isn't just about getting through assignments and exams. It's about discovering who you are as a person and who you want to become. By having more intentional pathways, kids can explore interests and talents, gain real-world experience, and skills that will serve our kids in their future. Things like vocational training, access to industry-recognized credentials, dedicated career counseling provide clear direction and purpose for our children. This allows children to align learning with aspirations and ensure that they are better prepared for the challenges of the future. By supporting the creation of more intentional pathways to career and college, we are investing in our collective future. We are not just preparing ourselves for the workforce, but we are laying the foundation for a brighter, more equitable future for all of us. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, members of the Hi, members of the committee. My name is Emily Velosa, and I'm the mother of 2 children. I have a 19-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter who is the only girl on the Chelsea High football team. She is thriving in her freshman year despite having the lack of resources for her school to support her. I'm here today to support the act of create and expand student pathways to success. Believing that there is a crucial need for providing more kids from Chelsea with the access to career-connected learning and real opportunities, I firmly believe that by doing so, we can transform the landscape of generalizing opportunities for our community. By expanding access to career-connected learning, we are giving our kids the chance to break free from the constraints of limited opportunities, offering them the chance to pursue careers in college after high school. Industry recognizes I urge you to stand with us to support this bill and to help us create the change that is so desperately needed. Together we can redefine the generalized opportunity means for children of Chelsea, create a bridge to future for our entire community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Any committee members, questions? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today at the State House. And thanks for your testimony. Next up, Tanya Metlach and Ed Lambert. Good to see you both.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lewis, Chairwoman Garlick, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on H592 and Senate 256, an act to create and expand student pathways to success, and H530 and Senate 343, an act establishing an education to career data system. My name is Tanya Metlach, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Massachusetts Business Roundtable. The secret to Massachusetts' economic success has historically been its ever-growing population of well-trained and highly educated workers, our nation-leading public K-12 education system, and world-class colleges and universities. Yet we're facing headwinds we can't ignore. Today, too many students, particularly those from under-resourced and marginalized communities, do not have access to programs and experiences that prepare them for college and careers. And by 2030, our state's working-age college educated labor force is expected to drop by 192,000. So what do we do to address these troubling trends? Last year, the Roundtable developed a policy framework, a talent agenda to drive Massachusetts' competitiveness, focused on talent in 3 pillars: talent recruitment and retention, talent development, and talent diversity. Within the talent development pillar, the Roundtable has been focused on supporting and scaling programs that position our students today for success in the future. As we think about how to ensure better connections between what students are learning in high school and the careers that await them in our state after graduation, the bills before you today can help create a more meaningful and relevant high school experience. H592 and Senate 256 would codify the key policy initiatives necessary to expand the number of high-quality college and career pathway programs that are available to students across Massachusetts in ways that will narrow equity gaps and provide more students with opportunities. And I know my time's up, so I'll just support other people's comments on the career to data education system as a key part of our longer-term strategy in investing in our biggest resource as a state, which is our people. So thank you for the time today, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Tanya. I'm here today representing the Mass Business Alliance for Education and the Student Pathways to Success Coalition, now 16 organizations strong, to offer support for a number of college and career readiness bills being offered by our legislative sponsors. House 592 and Senate 256 to expand pathways to all students, House 564 to incentivize the awarding of industry-recognized credentials, House 444 to require college and career planning for all students, and House 530 to create a state longitudinal data system. Good-paying jobs that offer opportunity for growth are going unfilled, while at the same time, students are graduating high school unaware of and unprepared for the opportunities that await them. We can fix this by strengthening the high school experience. Our coalition, representing parents, teachers, students, youth-serving, social justice, and business organizations, supports reinventing high school to give students a jump start on their future. The elements we're calling for are in alignment with the United States Department of Education's recommendations to have every high school student earn college credit, earn an industry-recognized credential, participate in work-based learning, and receive dedicated career counseling. This bill would create a foundation for that. It would charge the Workforce Skills Cabinet with taking the lead on pathways development and in setting goals and measuring progress in creating universal pathways, access, and participation. It would expand the voices to be heard at that cabinet level to include families, students, educators, employees, and business. It would require a biennial review to ensure alignment of programs with labor market need and an annual jobs report to drive decision-making around education and workforce investments. It would enhance the development of employability skills in high schools and seek to remove barriers to work-based and experiential learning. It would expand access to Chapter 74 vocational programs and embed early college and innovation pathways programs into the Chapter 70 formula to sustain their growth. It would incentivize the awarding of industry-recognized credentials to high school students, ensure computer science is taught in every high school, expand Mass Core, and make college and career counseling an element of every student's experience. The other bills in the coalition package contain some standalone elements of this larger bill. We thank you for your consideration, and we know that there are other bills like the college and high school bill, the vocational education comprehensive bills that have been filed that certainly complement this that we support as well. And so as all of that gets put together, we'd be happy to work with you and the coalition to help continue to advance the ball for students in Massachusetts. We thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Okay. Hang on one second. Any questions? All right. Thank you both very much. Appreciate your long-standing, hang tight, long-standing work on these issues. We've had a number of conversations in the past, and I think the committee, has tried in the past to, to prioritize this area. And of course, the legislature through the budget has significantly increased funding, for early college programs, for innovation pathways, and I think we're very committed to that. What I'd like to suggest, this bill in particular, 592 and Senate 256, has a lot in it, right?
Of course it does.
Some of which seems like, maybe low-hanging fruit. Some of it seems like heavy lift. So it would be helpful to maybe work with you and others, to really prioritize, if we're going to get the biggest result here in really continuing to, catalyze these efforts across all of our high schools, and again, particularly those that serve large numbers of disadvantaged students. I think we all agree we want to do that. Where are the levers that give us the most return, for our efforts? I know you want to support, and others, everything that's here.
Sure.
But I think if you could help prioritize, where you think the biggest impact can be had, I think that would be, I personally would find that very helpful.
Thank you, Senator. We completely agree, actually, and filed it as a conversation starter with regard to a lot of the work the committee has already undertaken. So, and we appreciate the investments that the legislature has made in early college and some of these other pathways programs. A lot of progress has been made. So we agree. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. All right, so let's see, right 2 o'clock, perfect timing. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move now to Senate Bill 316, which is an act relative to best management practices for wireless in schools and public institutions of higher education. And we have a number of people signed up for in-person testimony. So let's see, we have Cecilia Doucette first, followed by Shelley Wright, followed by Courtney Gilardi and Amelia Gilardi, and then several others. And let me just say at the outset, I know this can be difficult for you. And so, again, we appreciate that you're making the extra effort to be here and testify today. Oh, they switched. Okay. Okay. So, but we'll still do it all now? Okay. Okay. So we'll do that and then go through the rest virtually. Okay.
Thank you so much again, Senator. It's wonderful to be back here. My name is Cecilia Doucette. I am the Director of Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and here are 10 reasons to pass Senate 316 with urgency. 1, the science proves that wireless tablets, cell phones, wearables, smartboards, access points cause insomnia, headaches, nosebleeds, anxiety, depression, anger, behavior issues, learning disabilities, and more. The wireless industry targets schools outdoors with toxic cell towers and small cells. The Federal Communications Commission is captured by industry, as Harvard reports, and has been sued for ignoring 11,000 pages of evidence of harm. The courts ordered the FCC to protect our children, and the FCC is not responding. The FCC, in fact, is now pushing Wi-Fi on school buses. We should know that metal amplifies radiation, so this severely increases the kids' exposures. New Hampshire has finally passed the first law in the country to investigate wireless radiation, and they've issued this groundbreaking commission report, and I brought copies for both chairs. We have already prepared a fact sheet with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health that has yet to be released. Ashland Public Schools is the first in the country to develop best practices for mobile devices. We have presented to DESE, and they are waiting for higher authorities to empower them. That's this bill. The solution is simply plug devices in with Ethernet cables and adapters, and then turn off the antennas and the wireless access points. TechSafe Schools has been developed to teach us how to mitigate this toxin in our schools. And did you know the Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalition already has K through 12 curriculum on prevention? And there's now free medical training available for our school doctors, nurses, therapists, counselors, and first responders. Science indicates that indoors, children should never be exposed to wireless radiation. For you and I in our fully formed bodies, they recommend that we be at 10 to 100 microwatts per square meter. And in this room, right now, with wireless access points, our cell phones, our wearables, our tablets, we are already at 2,500. When I turn on my iPhone, it goes to 2.5 million, and we've given every child a tablet to put on their bodies. We are literally frying our kids in school. Chair Lewis, I will leave this with you and your committee for 1 month, and I invite you to take it home and go into your district, into your schools, and measure. If it goes into the red, which it will, we are in big trouble with our kids. This radiation must be mitigated if we are to resolve the mental health and chronic illness crises that our children are facing today. I would be so honored to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Doucette. Anyone?
And
All right.
might I
Thank you.
also-
I appreciate you had a lot more and all the materials you brought. So I think if you are comfortable leaving that with the committee, or if you need us to make copies to return to you.
No, I've got packets to give to
that would
all of
be-
you.
that would be
I put in
welcome.
EMF
Thank you.
points of confusion, that's electromagnetic fields of radiation versus fact, because we find ourselves in the big tobacco situation where the industry is pushing their agenda and not giving the facts to us as parents and administrators to protect our families. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So as I understand it, everyone else signed up is remote.
I
Is that
think
right?
so.
Okay. All right. So okay. All right, so we're just going to take one break in the testimony before we go remote, and I see Senator Comerford and Representative Blaze are here. And I know you've got students coming as well, so that's just wonderful. And we haven't heard any testimony on rural schools yet today, so I think I think it's time. You're up. Okay, great, thank you. I think these are the same.
Here, we have some.
Are they different? Okay. Are they different?
One is an overview of the commission's work,
Oh,
and one
and
is
the
an
other's the-
overview of the bill itself.
Bill, okay, great. All right. Great, thank you.
So thank you, Chair Garlick, Chair Lewis, and members of the committee for taking us out of order. We're here today to speak in support of H3567, S2388, an act to provide a sustainable future for rural schools. I'm proud to have introduced this bill with my Senate colleague, Joe Comerford, and with the strong support of communities and organizations across the Commonwealth. In 2019, the Student Opportunity Act was signed into law. It included a commission to examine the unique fiscal challenges facing rural school districts and districts with low and declining enrollment. The commission's final report included 36 recommendations, many of which are included in this bill. As a result of the Commission's work, we understand that insufficient per-pupil funding is at the heart of the challenge that is faced by rural school districts. For decades, these schools have increasingly struggled under the burden of circumstances that other communities do not encounter, including bumping up against the Prop 2.5 ceiling. Declining populations, stagnant or declining tax bases, and legacy costs, in combination with the disproportionately high costs of educating students in smaller schools, have left our districts with funding deficits and our communities with impossible choices to make. Several provisions in this legislation are designed to address the very distinct challenges facing rural schools, but of course, top of the list is the $60 million required for rural school aid. I'm grateful to House and Senate leadership and the Healy-Driscoll administration for the significant increase to rural school aid in the FY24 budget, but our schools need a consistent, adequate, and reliable funding stream. Through the Commission's efforts, we also found that there were provisions that could benefit all schools, including fully funding transportation, assisting with shared services, and other measures, including the need to fully examine special education here in the Commonwealth. And I want to recognize Senator Comerford and Rep. Dan Carey's efforts in this area. Today, you will hear from some phenomenal students, teachers, school committee members, superintendents, town officials, and others who will speak much more eloquently than I ever could about the need for this legislation to ensure that every student, regardless of their zip code, receives the same educational opportunities across our great Commonwealth. Thank you again, Chairs Garlick, Chair Lewis, members of the committee, for your consideration of this legislation. I respectfully request that you report this bill out favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Blais, for that testimony. Chair Garlick, Chair Lewis, honorable colleagues, thank you for affording me this opportunity. I'm going to speak very, very briefly to the bill because Rep. Blais did such a great job. I also want to just note that you have an act providing a sustainable future for, an act fairly reimbursing local school transportation for foster children also before you today. I filed that with Rep. Farley-Bouvier. And as you know, Auditor Bump found that when foster children continue their education at their school of origin, transportation cost is supposed to be covered by federal sources. However, the auditor found that only 17% of districts are reimbursed. It's about the arduousness of actually asking the federal government for reimbursement. So this simply shifts that work to DCF, and then our districts will get reimbursed. I'll submit written testimony. But let me just say that on an act providing a sustainable future for rural schools, I want to highlight a passage where the Rural School Commission, I want to thank Representative Blais for her work on that, came to a very stark conclusion. Quote, and this is a unanimously held report, quote, rural school districts in Massachusetts struggle with a set of challenges that have left many students with less than they need and deserve. That's a stark fact embodied by that rural schools report. So that's why we're here, chairs and committee, to ask this committee to use our authority as legislators to allow students from every corner of the Commonwealth to have the same opportunities to learn and grow and be successful. The Commission's findings must be a wake-up call for all of us. The math is brutal in local communities, and we can no longer ignore it. As Rep. Blais said, well, Prop 2.5 is bringing major collisions to small towns. With declining enrollment, costs do not fall commensurately. That's what the report found. To avoid deficits, cuts must be made to core enrichment programs, to special education, to honors classes, to libraries, to counseling, to health services, you understand, and to all after-school opportunities in some cases. And then strapped local governments on top of that have to make brutal decisions. Is it a firefighter or a teacher? Is it garbage collection or someone at the recycling center? Or is it a special educator? So I would say that this committee should be rightfully proud of the Student Opportunity Act, which transformed school funding in the Commonwealth and is strengthening opportunities to learn and thrive for many, but not for all. Commonwealth students. I was proud to vote yes on that bill, proud, and I'm so grateful to this committee for its leadership. And now Rep. Blais and I are coming to ask the committee to finish the job by addressing the glaring and unique needs and challenges in rural school districts. So we're going to submit a section by section, which you have thanks to Rep. Blais' efforts. We have many people here to testify before you, and I hope you receive their testimony, and I say this with respect and love for your work, with the urgency that we feel. We cannot let another session lapse without helping our rural schools and our schools with low and declining enrollment. And I'm grateful for the funding gains, but we know so much more needs to be done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Great. Thank you both so much. When we were working on the Student Opportunity Act, we knew, as Senator Comerford just pointed out, that there would be a set of schools and students that would be helped, but not to the extent that help and assistance is really needed, and that's our rural schools and our schools with declining enrollment, and that was why we did create that special commission, as you said, and I'm just so impressed with the work that Representative Blais, you and I think it was former Senator Hines, right, as the co-chairs, and Senator Comerford, such a great contributor, and along with other colleagues and so many stakeholders. I mean, from having that idea of, okay, we should at least put the time and effort into really understanding these issues better, to the work that you then did over a lengthy period of time to establish that consensus, and then to give us the report, and now to turn that into actionable legislation. Really appreciate everything that's been done in that leadership, and already, of course, it's making a difference because we expanded the rural school aid line item vastly more than in the past, although again, not yet where it needs to be. But I know there's other recommendations and other strategies that you're advocating for that we need to work with you on. So look forward to hearing all the testimony today, and really making this hopefully a priority for us this legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to return to Senate Bill 316, and I think we have a number of people waiting to testify remotely. Shelley Wright is next. Shelley Wright.
Thank you, esteemed legislators. I'm the director of a national nonprofit organization, Canadian Educators for Safe Technology. We support a growing number of students and teachers who are now injured by Wi-Fi, microwave radiation frequency, RF. Simple, safe tech practices intentionally minimize student and staff microwave exposures. RF power density can be reduced by 25% while maximizing device efficiency. On-off switches and wired tech are inclusive and can prevent fatal or serious injury in schools. 10 years ago, I received a physician diagnosis of electromagnetic hypersensitivity by the director of the Environmental Health Clinic at Women's College Hospital in Toronto. This is an environmentally induced intolerance to microwave frequency emissions. Physician-diagnosed students and staff like me experience microwave sickness. Common symptoms include debilitating migraines, loss of executive functioning, disabling vertigo or disorientation, and cardiac symptoms including pressure in the chest and irregular heartbeat. Those who are severely impacted may not recover for days or weeks, or may experience permanent injury. Some of these symptoms are linked to strokes and brain tumors. EMFs are also known as causal cofactor for serious autoimmune diseases like ALS, MS, and Parkinson's. Cardiac and neurological symptoms can be life-threatening. According to integrative cardiologist Stephen Sinatra, children experiencing tachycardia in modulated microwave frequency emissions can also experience increased risk of stroke or heart failure. Children need protection. I urge you to vote yes to Bill S316. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Courtney Gilardi, and then Amelia Gilardi. Or maybe you're testifying together?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi.
Wonderful. Hi, I have Amelia next to me, so I'll testify first, and then Amelia. Thank you. So my name is Courtney Gilardi. I'm here in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Esteemed legislators, thank you for your attention to the health and safety of our schools in regards to wireless exposure, radiation exposures. All of our children, teachers, and staff deserve access to safe and healthy technology. Before we were injured, we did not know that this was an issue, but we were lucky enough that our doctors and our pediatricians knew. Wi-Fi networks create high-density wireless radio frequency exposures in classrooms, and research has found that these are associated with cancer, brain damage, headaches, memory problems, and damage to the reproductive and cardiovascular systems. Safer solutions do exist, and we need to work together to find them that allow internet connectivity, but without these harmful exposures. I am here not just as a school teacher, but as a mother of 2 children who have been injured by wireless technology and have suffered greatly. When we reduced our exposure, as our physicians and pediatricians advised, my children's health was restored and they started to thrive again. This is one example. When my youngest daughter was at her sickest with electromagnetic sensitivity, she was missing school and could not take her MCAS testing. Now, after 2 years of reducing her exposure, she has nearly a perfect score, and I will send this to you guys. She is in the 99th percentile, where here in Massachusetts, our state average is at 50%. Our children can thrive and they can succeed when they are in a healthy environment. In Massachusetts, there is no monitoring or measuring the cumulative exposures of not just the Wi-Fi, but all of the devices in school. And without you calling for a task force or to take action, there can be no mitigating or correcting this. There is no federal or state agency examining the cumulative exposure and risk to children. These standards were set in 1996 prior to the advent of Wi-Fi, based on a 6-minute exposure to a 220-pound man. Our doctors and our school nurses know these risks. They would like to see action. Parents and children would like to see action. And with our testimony, you know what needs to be done. We're asking you to please take action. Please champion this bill and see it through. You have doctors and subject matter experts here on the call that are here to support you. Please work with them and help all of our children in the Commonwealth thrive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Are we all set? Oh.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
My name is Amelia Gilardi. I'm 15 years old and I live in Massachusetts. I have a medical diagnosis of electromagnetic sensitivity, also known as microwave illness. This is due to an environmental exposure to radio frequency radiation. For those who share my diagnosis, the only remedy is to reduce and limit exposure. Many of the children who share our diagnosis have been forced to be homeschooled or attend a school that has hardwiring. Both my sister and I have this diagnosis, and we have asked for accommodations, and they have not yet been provided. My parents have spoken to several of the superintendents and principals and vice principals, and those in charge have even had meetings with our doctors, and yet no action has been taken. Our public schools state on every piece of information that they do not discriminate on the basis of color or religion or disability, and yet here we are with a medical diagnosis. It should not be too hard to simply work with families to reduce the power output of these Wi-Fi routers, or install an off switch in classrooms when not in use, or simply ask students and teachers to put phones on airplane mode so we are not exposed. We need your help, and today we are asking. Time and time again, our school administrators say they are waiting for you, our legislators, to make these decisions. So today we ask you to please make it a priority to examine wireless radiation in our schools here in Massachusetts and make it safe not just for me and my little sister, but for all students to learn and thrive in a healthy environment. I humbly ask for your support on this bill, and not that you just pass it, but that you actively champion it for the health and safety of all of us. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. You did a great job. Thank you. All right, we're going to next hear from Theodora Scarato, followed by Eileen Duane, followed by Leslie Frodema. So, Theodora Scarato.
Thank you so much. I am Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust, and we are a scientific nonprofit focused on prevention. Our organization, along with several other petitioners, sued the FCC several years ago in relation to their outdated wireless radiation limits, and we won. The FCC was ordered in our case, Environmental Health Trust et al. Versus the FCC, to provide a reasoned explanation as to how its limits for wireless radiation exposure addressed children's vulnerability, and long-term exposures, as well as several other issues. It's been 2 years, and there's been no response. Now, U.S. government limits for wireless radiation were never designed to protect for health effects from long-term daily exposure, the kind of exposure that children receive in the school setting. These limits are based on studies from the 70s and 80s exposing rats and small monkeys to under 60 minutes of wireless frequencies. 60 minutes. This is it. This is the basis for our scale, for our safety limits. And then they applied that to an adult, a large male adult. And there's many issues with the way our radiation is measured. And we go into that in our website. You can go to Environmental Health Trust to learn more about that. So children are unprotected. Once upon a time, the Environmental Protection Agency was in development of proper safety standards, but they were defunded, so our schools are stuck with antiquated guidelines. There has been no federal review of the up-to-date scientific evidence, no review of the research on damage to the brain, immune system, and reproductive organs. And in the United States, there is no measuring, monitoring, enforcement, or oversight program in regards to this issue. Other countries have safeguards where Wi-Fi is removed from the classrooms, radiation is regularly measured in classrooms and playgrounds. Insurers rank wireless non-ionizing radiation as high risk, comparing it to lead and asbestos. And companies not only classify it as a pollutant, but also warn their shareholders of the risk, but not our parents and teachers. And that's why the Maryland State Children's Environmental Protection Council, the New Hampshire Commission, the Santa Clara Medical Association recommend reducing Wi-Fi to mitigate risk. So I submitted extensive scientific evidence supporting the need for policies that put children's health first at the center of decision-making. They deserve due diligence, accountability, and safe technology. Thank you so much, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody? Thank you. We appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. All right, Eileen Duane is next.
Hi, thank you for listening to all of us. My name's Eileen Duane, and I am a retired school teacher and a mother, and I feel extremely strong in favor of S316. And as a lot of people have said, the FCC guidelines are outdated, and the current safety limits haven't been updated since 1996. That's before the iPhone was even out to the public. The FCC has been sued, as people have mentioned, and and they're doing nothing. The list of harm is long and includes cancer and DNA damage. I mean, this is serious stuff. The FCC, as someone just mentioned, have not done any long-term cumulative effects, which is exactly what we're exposing our children to every single day, hours and hours. Now on the bus. I mean, we need to take action, and I'm so glad you're here to listen to this. We need to go back to hardwiring our computers. You know, when my children were young, we were hardwired. The house was safe. The public places were safe. We can do this. The health of our children is our future. This is a huge deal. We're messing with their biological bodies. Please vote in favor of this important bill. And there's so much research out there that's available to look at. So thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you very much. Just for the benefit of our students and those who are here to testify on the Rural Schools Bill, we have 5 more individuals who are going to testify on the wireless bill, and then we will open the hearing on rural schools. All right, so next up is Leslie Frodema, to be followed by Jonathan Mirin and Sandra Galiwango. Leslie Frodema.
Hi, thank you. My name is Leslie Frodema. I live in Sudbury, Massachusetts. I'm a registered nurse, and in February will be completing my adult nurse practitioner training. About 5 years ago, I was at a professional conference on brain health and healthy aging, a topic that I have a lot of interest and education in. And there was a medical doctor there who spoke about the effects of wireless radiation and health. I'd never heard of this before in all my years as a nurse. But he opened my eyes and kind of sent me along a path to begin my own journey to learn more about educating myself and my patients about the harmful effects of wireless radiation, also known as non-ionizing radiation, which we now are exposed to 24/7 as wireless technology surrounds us. He explained at that conference the medical science, which basically we've come to recognize that there's toxins such as DDT, benzene, that have these adverse effects on our health. But we have to now also expand our thinking to include radiation and wireless radiation as another type of toxin. And unfortunately, children are the most vulnerable to this toxicity because of their thinner skulls and the higher water content of their brains. Wireless radiation passes through the body, and we are electrical beings. We have heart rhythms, we have brain waves, and the wave and the wavelength of wireless radiation affect our signaling and our cells and lead to things like oxidative stress and DNA damage that can cause problems from every system in the body, from neurologic to hormonal. The most I can really do in 2 minutes is just to ask you to go to educate yourselves more about this topic, to go to Physicians for Safe Technology and begin to learn more. Last year, the first textbook on wireless radiation and the health effects came out for the medical community. So I think you're going to be seeing more of this in the future. And I appreciate you taking the time to hear our input on this. And I hope you'll support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jonathan Mirin?
Mirin, yes.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you. Hi, how are you? Thank you, Chair Lewis, Chair Garlick, members of the committee for hearing this testimony of me and everyone else who's speaking on behalf of S316 today. I feel honored to have Senator Mark as my senator out in Charlemont, Massachusetts. As you may have heard, Senator Mark became familiar with the issue of electrical sensitivity because he worked for Verizon before he went to law school. And now he has colleagues who are in the same condition as my wife. That is, they're electrically sensitive. They're essentially chronic health and neurologic issues when exposed to wireless radiation levels that the rest of us take for granted. So this issue, chose me. I didn't go looking for it. I run a theater company. We do a lot of work in schools. I also teach drama at a local middle school. And when I go into schools, one of the things I look for is like, where are the routers? Are they in the classroom or are they in the hallway? Just because this is something that I'm aware that I'm giving something the kids need. I'm teaching theater, but at the same time, I'm also aware that they're being harmed by this involuntary exposure. And, I'm not going to go into the details about the how and the why of that harm because I know that others have sent research for you to look at. The tide is turning. Anytime you question a social norm, it takes time. But we have 3 schools in our region, I'm happy to say, who have now made adjustments this year and previous years, lowering the exposure of students. We're at a place now where you can simply adjust the beacon signal of a router, literally a no cost or very low cost adjustment, and have it pulse every second instead of every 1/10 of a second, reducing the exposure by 90%. I cannot think of a more cost-effective way to improve the atmosphere and the public health of our students and our teachers than making this simple adjustment, again, at no or low cost, and I'll send you the link for that beacon signal adjustment. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is Sandra Galiwango, to be followed by Janet FitzGerald, and then lastly, Shirley Jackson. Sandra Galiwango?
Hi, thank you so much for hearing me out today. My name is Sandra Galiwango. I am married. I live in Ashland. I'm an MBA from Northeastern University and the mother of 3. And I myself was suffering during COVID when I was working remotely on a laptop, and my fingers started feeling these sharp burning sensations. And I was also suffering from insomnia and vertigo. And I was able to connect the dots and realize that I needed to hardwire my connection in order to alleviate symptoms. Since then, this year, I have a 3rd grade son and a 5th grade daughter in public school in Massachusetts. And my son regularly suffers from headaches and recently asked me, he said, "Mommy, do you ever feel that painful, like burning feeling in your fingers when you're on the computer?" And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, my son is having symptoms too. So what I really ask of the committee is to review the peer-reviewed research and protect our children from harm in schools by voting yes on this bill and allowing us to take the actions that will create a safer learning environment. Thanks.
All set? Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your personal story with us. Janet FitzGerald? Janet FitzGerald, are you there?
I am.
Okay, great.
All right. Can you see me? Almost. All right.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. So I would like to first thank all of you for hearing this very important bill to protect our children while they're in school. My name is Janet FitzGerald. I live in the North Shore, and I'm a speech language pathologist who has worked not only in healthcare and the business sectors as well, but in every area of schools from preschool to university level. I've attended many, many hours of scientific webinars, including the EMF Medical Conference 2021, which is now available for free, as Mrs. Doucette mentioned. And based on all of the experts I've listened to over the years, doctors, lawyers, politicians, students like one you heard from today, Amelia, and many others, we know that we're in new territory here. So we need to do what we can to protect our students while they're in their learning environment in relation to this RF/EMF area, also called wireless radiation. So given that there are no long-term safety studies proving safety, we have to use a precautionary principle. And I say, yes, go ahead and please do vote for S316. How could we not? How could we say to our children, no, we don't care, you know, take a risk, get cancer, get sick, doesn't matter. We can't, obviously. So I consider this bill a no-brainer. I hope you all agree, based on everything you've heard, because we don't want our kids to become lab rats. They're our future, we need them. We have plenty of studies available to us that do indicate serious harm. And I know that it can seem like a bottomless pit of info to try to go through. I'm not an engineer, I know what that's like, but I would tell you that there are tremendous resources available to us, including Massachusetts for Safe Technology, Tech Safe Schools, ehtrust.org, which is Environmental Health Trust, you heard from Theodora Scarato, and Physicians for Safe Technology. So we have plenty of resources to make this learning easier for us so that we know we're doing the right thing, which we are. I'm not sure I mentioned, but I have a daughter who is in the university in Boston. So of course I was concerned. I heard there was, through a mother from the same university, that her son had actually died of a brain tumor while he was a student living in the dorm in this university. So I went to the university myself to measure, and as did another mother. And I'm going to just do a quick demo for you to show you how simple it is. It's not really hard to do the right thing.
Ms. FitzGerald, you are going to need to wrap up, please.
Okay, all right. Well, the demo would show you that With our cell phones, our meters go from green to red. And on our school campuses, why can't we measure? I went to the school, I asked them, please, I videotape the measurements. Can we talk about this? There are free lectures available to you. However, no takers. And I think it's because we don't have the guidelines yet. So we're looking to you for those guidelines so that I can know my daughter's safe on her campus and all the students in Massachusetts can feel safe, that they're safe on campus in relation to radiation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And finally, last person signed up is Shirley Jackson. Nope. Okay. Nope. Oh, Shirley Jackson, are you there? All right, last chance. Shirley Jackson?
To red. And on our school campuses, why can't we measure? I went to the school, I asked them, please, I videotape the measurements. Can we talk about this? There are free lectures available to you. However, no takers. And I think it's because we don't have the guidelines.
That's FitzGerald, the one who just spoke.
Okay. Should we move on? Okay.
She's there now.
Last person signed up is Shirley Jackson.
Yes, I'm here now.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good day, and thank you for listening. Shirley Joy Jackson, 1287.
Jackson?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. 12875 Barrow Road, North Palm Beach, Florida, 561-691-8954. I participate.
Shirley Jackson?
Yes.
I think you have the hearing live streamed on your laptop. You need to turn that off.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I apologize.
And you need to turn on your video, please.
Yeah, I thought I did that, but. Oh,
there we go. Okay.
Is this working?
Yes.
Miracles abound, I tell you. Okay.
Okay, please go ahead because we're tight on time.
Yes. I'm a retired educator, research project manager, safe schools coordinator. I invented a database that identified students headed toward risks so that we could instead support them and prevent failures. Please take note. Please put whatever teeth are necessary in this bill to monitor and improve the protective health and safety effects by insisting on the lowest exposure levels possible to achieve educational goals. Your efforts to alert educators to their fiduciary responsibilities for the health and safety of youth are absolutely critical. Number 2, take note. Insist that the process includes contacting those that are experienced in how to reduce exposures by truly having tested equipment, processes, and training that work. It's actually fairly easy to make big reductions, but learn from those how to purchase and install wisely, following building biology principles to assure health and safety are co-requisite goals. Expand fiber optics, variable beacon signal outputs, and scheduling and shutoffs rather than a default of Wi-Fi. In closing, the adverse impacts of EMF exposures are real. There's a cost to pay if you don't step up to minimize exposures. I was forced to retire early with my language facility often impaired. Students react more erratically in high exposure places. Thank you again for keeping us educators alert to the best practices for EMF health and safety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Jackson. All right, so that wraps up the testimony for Bill Senate 316. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 316. We are now going to resume in the order of the bills with taking in-person testimony. So we are going to take up House Bill 3567 and Senate Bill 2388, an act to provide a sustainable future for rural schools. We heard from Representative Blais and Senator Comerford earlier, and I know we have a number of students waiting to testify and educators. I'm not sure exactly the order we want to do things. Did we want the students to go first, or? Okay, because we have a lot of different people signed up, so let's see. Well, I guess I'll just stick with this order, but if we need to change it, we can do that. Jessica Corwin and Joey Pisani. Okay. And Todd Gazda, Dr. Gazda. Is Dr. Gazda here? Okay. Did you want to? Okay. Little did you know you were part of this panel. All right. Then after that, we'll hear from Mark Blatchley, Deanna LeBlanc, and then I think students from the Gateway Regional School District. And is that these students? Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Welcome. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jessica Corwin. I'm the chair of the Sunderland School Committee. I'm also a licensed teacher who has taught in urban, suburban, and rural districts in Massachusetts. It was my experiences teaching in rural Hatfield that drove me to run for school committee. Due to funding constraints, rural schools in my area are far more likely than larger districts to have health insurance benefits with high costs to employees. When I worked in Hatfield, the town was only able to contribute 50% toward the cost of my health insurance premiums because the other 50% came out of my paycheck. When I had 2 kids in daycare, my daycare bills actually exceeded my take-home pay. In other words, I was working only for health insurance and my family was otherwise entirely supported by my spouse's job. So single parents can't afford to work in districts with such low benefits. 18 of the 20 lowest paying school districts in the Commonwealth are ones that receive rural aid. Over and over again, I watched beloved Hatfield colleagues leave the district to work in larger and higher paying districts to the south. This turnover hurts students. Please understand that rural towns are not luxuriously underpopulated suburbs. We have small tax bases, and many of our towns have already increased our tax rates to some of the highest in the state. My own town of Sunderland has passed 3 overrides in the last 6 years just to remain operational. Rural poverty is a very real challenge. Approximately 1/3 of Sunderland students come from low-income families, and these children face unique challenges because of the rural isolation and lack of access to resources. The Student Opportunity Act was meant to provide assistance to students like this, but due to our declining enrollment, more than half of rural school districts have only received minimum funding increases after the first 4 years. This bill is essential for rural communities to provide the high-quality education for which Massachusetts is known. As a parent, teacher, and school committee member, I urge you to report out favorably on this bill. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your service on the school committee, too.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chair Garlick, Chair Lewis, and members of the Joint Committee on Education. My name is Joey Pisani. I'm 17 years old and a senior at Gateway Regional High School in Huntington. And most importantly, I love Massachusetts. I love our Commonwealth enough to not only note the incredible accomplishments within the education system, such as universal school meals, but also where there still is work to be done to ensure that every student from the Berkshires to Boston are receiving an equitable, high-quality public education. That's why myself and many others from Gateway traveled here to testify for you today. Because currently our school is not guaranteed a sustainable future, largely because of a simple factor that shouldn't determine the quality of our education in schools, our zip code. I do the announcements every day at school, but many can't hear my voice as the intercom system currently isn't working, making it difficult for students and teachers to get updates, and as you could imagine, could pose a potential safety concern. The state's Rural Schools Commission released a detailed report, which I believe you all got, which recommended that $60 million be allocated to rural school aid. This past budget cycle, a historic $15 million was allocated to it. However, $15 million is still only 1% of the recommendation. While I may be starting to get some senioritis, I could not afford to only do 25% of an assignment, as that is a failing grade. The Student Opportunity Act, as earlier mentioned, was a landmark piece of legislation, and rural schools are expected to get less than 1% of that funding. Once again, a failing grade. From regionalization costs to transportation reimbursement and equities, our rural schools are struggling to keep their doors open. And families in towns and cities with students are struggling because they currently are having to pick up the bill. Teamwork is a very important thing to me, and this legislation filed by our teammates in this effort, who themselves are a fabulous team, Rep. Blay and Senator Comerford, H3567 and S2388, if passed, which couldn't happen without a favorable report today, would address these issues facing our rural schools. As I prepare to walk across the graduation stage in a few months and throughout my education at Gateway, my goal has been to leave our school better than how I found it. I look to the fourth graders who you'll be hearing from shortly, who attend Chester Elementary, which is where I personally started my Gateway journey. Rural school students are the future. Future students, electricians, Dunkin' baristas, and even future members of this committee. I hope to do everything I can to make sure that those students have the best Gateway experience possible, and I know this bill could help with that. To close with some slightly changed lyrics to Neil Diamond's song, Sweet Caroline. Why rural schools aren't equitably funded, I can't begin to know in, but then I know that this legislation would help them be strong. Help us Gators, we're the future, we believe in you to come along. A favorable report on this legislation would be so good, so good, so good. Thank you.
Well done, thank you. That was terrific.
Really, how am I supposed to follow that?
I know, you're in an unenviable position.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Todd Gazda, and I am the Executive Director of the Collaborative for Educational Services in Northampton. We serve 37 member districts in Hampshire and Franklin County, most of whom are rural districts. This is my 22nd year in public education, and I have been a rural school educator for a large part of that. I've been a teacher, a principal, and a superintendent. I am also the product of a rural education, having graduated from Gateway Regional in 1988. So the funding challenges facing rural schools are nothing new. I can remember my father, who was principal of Gateway Regional in 1980 when I was 10 years old, having to deal with the cuts that he had to make in his teachers because of Proposition 2.5. That has been exacerbated by industry leaving the area, what industry that we did have. And so these challenges remain. You have taken action already to help mitigate that, and it's appreciated. One of the challenges, though, is that superintendents in our area don't know whether they can count on it continuing. That's one of the reasons that this is so critical at this juncture. It's important to remember that for regional schools and communities, the schools are the heart and center of those communities, focusing not just on education, but also serving as community centers. As a child, I can remember going to the elementary school for the local raccoon dinner. Just trust me, raccoon, skip it. But the side dishes were wonderful. But I just want to point out that it is important for rural schools to support their communities. In order to do so effectively, we need the supports that are in this bill. And that's why I'm really here to ask you today to support our districts and recommend favorable passage of this bill. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Oh, and Representative Altrino, Vice Chair of the committee, has joined us. Good to see you. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your testimony. I don't know, Dr. Gazda, if you're the right person. You don't cover Berkshire County, right?
No.
With your collaborative?
We just about everything but.
Berkshire,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
At some point, maybe we can talk about to my colleagues as well, maybe not
there
now.
Is
but
no
I know
educational collaborative in Berkshire
okay.
County.
I know there was a lot of work on the regionalization effort in southern Berkshire County that just unfortunately failed to get voter support. So would like to explore that a little further as to what happened there and how we respond to that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Let's see. Next up is Mark Blatchley, to be followed by Deanna LeBlanc, and then we'll get to our students. Okay. Is Mark Blatchley here? No? Okay. Is Deanna LeBlanc here? Okay. Welcome.
Hello, and thanks for hearing my testimony today. My name is Deanna LeBlanc. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Curriculum at Gateway Regional. I've been a proud Gator for 7 years. Much of my time as the Director of Curriculum is dedicated to grants now, because we're using a lot of competitive grants to offset much needed funding. Rural school aid is consistently underfunded at the $60 million. And it's inconsistent when we get it, which makes it really challenging to actually develop a budget that truly uses that money well and makes it consistent for us to do the budgeting process. As a rural school district, we start our budgeting process early. We're already talking about FY25. My time should be dedicated to the fabulous students, some of whom you've heard already and some you're about to hear, to their learning, to talking about their curriculum, to really working on how they learn. But instead, my time is dedicated to finding competitive funding sources to just kind of make things work and keep things afloat. Our students deserve a predictable world. They deserve my undivided attention as an educator. They deserve all of our undivided attention as educators. And they deserve an equitable educational experience, not based on their zip code. Rural school aid is the vehicle to make that happen. Give our students the access to what they need. We need to stop that chaotic shuffle for competitive funding or trying to figure out where we need to make cuts, but instead make it a predictable world for our students. I'm sure that they will share so many valuable things with you, so I will keep it very brief. Please report favorably on this bill, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so let's see. I think we're ready for our students. The names I have here, but when you come up, if you could also introduce yourselves, are Kristen Smidey, Sophia Stone, Tucker Robitaille, Brutus Briggs, and Destiny Martinez. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So we may have one too few chairs.
That's okay.
But maybe one person could stand and then we could just rotate. Okay. All right, and when it's your turn, just bring the microphone over to you. That's nice and close, and start by telling us your name.
Hello.
Hello.
That's Sophia.
Hello, my name is Sophia Stone. We're very excited to be here today, and we would just like to have you understand that we would like you to have your full attention on us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are from Gateway Regional School District. My name is Kristen Smitty. I'm the proud superintendent of the towns of Huntington, Middlefield, Montgomery, Chester, Blandford, and Russell. This is Brutus, Tucker, Sophia, and Destiny, and we're really excited to speak to you today. So Brutus is going to kick us off.
The Royal Commission report estimated the cost would be around $60 million to level the playing field in the classroom for students living in rural communities compared to those living in other areas of Massachusetts. That alone should alert you to the strength and grit shown by my fellow Gateway Regional students, families, communities, and schools in the hill towns of Western Massachusetts.
Rural living is not for the faint of heart, especially at Chester Elementary School, which is part of the Gateway Regional School District. A good example of this is when we had to rely on our school to provide showers and drinking water to those without for a whole week. When a main pipe burst in our town last summer, we sometimes go over the valley and through the woods to not just get to school every day, but to also get safe drinking water.
But why are the mountains steeper and the forests denser at school too? Shouldn't all students have access to the same educational and learning opportunities during the school day? I should not have access to fewer opportunities or a lower quality education because of where my grass grows. Where I live should not impact my access to quality learning and opportunities in my classroom. Students in the hill towns are just as important as every other student in the state.
Please support the act to provide a sustainable future for rural schools to make sure
that every student attending a rural school in Massachusetts has access to a quality education and a successful future, including us here today from Chester Elementary School.
Ready? Thank you.
Well, you did such a great job. Thank you all. Superintendent, did you want to say a few words too?
I submitted my written testimony.
You did, okay. And then, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Oh, great. Did you want to say anything? They said it all? Okay. Oh, Representative Pease, I think, has wanted to say something.
Yes, I have to pipe in here since they're all from the same, well, a newer elementary school than what I went to in Chester back in the day. But also seeing Dr. Gazda there, because I'm a few years ahead of him, so I went to Gateway, obviously, when his father was my principal. So they did a great job, and it's really good to see the folks from up in the Hilltown area.
Thank you, Representative Pease. So you're all fourth graders, right? And
Yes.
so do you have more than one fourth grade class in your school, or just one? Just one fourth grade class. And how many students, do you know how many are in your class in total? 16. Yep.
We traveled really far today so you could hear our message, and it's really important to us to support the rural schools bill, and we appreciate your consideration.
Great. Well, we really appreciate you coming to be with us today and to speak with the committee. So you did a great job. Good. I hope you at least get to have lunch, in Boston and have some fun while you're here.
Pizza.
All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Thank you all. All right. Super. All right. I believe we have two high school students from Gateway Regional. Theo Page? I'm sorry. It's a little hard to read the name here. Is it Theo? Yes. Alexis. Great. All right. You are up.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not a high school student.
You had me fooled.
Should I begin?
Yes.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Alexis Bartret, and I'm a Spanish teacher at Gateway Regional High School in Huntington. It is easy to ignore the reality that rural schools face unique challenges that necessitate financial support. Rural schools already serve communities with limited resources, such as lack of access to the internet, hospitals, public transportation, and training opportunities. Adequate funding is essential to provide competitive salaries for educators and support staff, enabling these schools to attract and keep the best talent. There's just not enough staff to support the programs that the students need and want to be competitive in the workforce today. Adequate funding can bridge this gap, providing students with access to advanced and competitive educational resources. Adequate funding ensures that school facilities are safe, well-maintained, and equipped with modern tools and materials. Right now, at Gateway Regional High School, we have no functioning clocks in the school. The cost to upgrade our alarm and intercom systems was too high for our schools to afford replacement clocks when the system was revamped. Investing in rural schools has far-reaching economic implications. A well-educated workforce in rural areas can contribute to local economic growth and help combat the cycle of poverty. The reality is that in rural areas, there aren't even enough minimum wage jobs to choose from, yet our students are not even being trained to be competitive in the job market that will support their families. Our students are aware of this reality, and the result is grim. We are losing students who believe that school is a waste of time. They don't see a purpose for themselves in the programs that we're able to provide. So many students in our school feel uninspired, alienated, and unmotivated by the traditional and often bare-bones academic track, and they check out or they rebel. They don't see a place for themselves in a system that can't offer them the programs to gain the skills and training they want and need. It's so important to provide funding to rural schools so that we can build a future where people can support a family, feel proud of what they do for a living, and contribute fruitfully to the economy. We have to address the needs of this often forgotten group of people, and we have to prioritize and support the education of every child, regardless of where they live. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Theodora DeAngelis Page, and I am a 10th grader at Gateway Regional High School. When people from outside of our 6 towns ask me where I go to high school, 99% of the time they say, huh? As a student from an entire grade of less than 40 kids, a baseball team that barely has enough players, and a band that is constantly in need of supporting musicians, Gateway somehow makes it work. But I know, in reality, that the opportunities that I have as a student are incredibly limited compared to the average suburban and urban high schooler. These limitations include the amount of AP classes that I'm able to take, which only include 4 courses taught by our own staff. In addition, we have very few electives or academic courses offerings that fit students' aspirations and less than robust extracurriculars. As a college hopeful, I believe that being fit for taking those next steps is majorly supported by your actions in high school. As you can imagine, our school and counselors can only do so much to help us prepare for college, while managing 6 different grades with a variety of issues on their plate. Having dedicated people to help guide the college process and experience would be a huge asset to Gateway, to its students, and to me. The money that has been set aside for us is helpful, but not adequate to fully support students' lives and futures. These funds can help our school by providing students and teachers with the resources necessary to help us thrive and strive to be better prepared for what's next after we leave our supportive Gateway community. With money to fit our needs, we could thrive in the swamps, aka our small rural towns, just like the Gateway Gators we were supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Theo, did you say you were in 10th grade, right?
Yeah.
How big is your total class? You said 40 students?
It's a little less than 40 students.
And that's drawing from 6 towns, right? That all attend Gateway?
5 or 6 towns, yeah.
Okay. So, and is it 9 through 12?
Yep, our high school.
So the total students at your high school, is it roughly 4 times 40?
Yes.
Okay.
Roughly.
So 160 is the total.
Yes.
And you said you have just the choice of only 4 AP courses that are offered?
Alternate every other year. So I believe it's only 2 AP classes per year taught by our own staff.
Are there any additional AP classes you can take like virtually? You can take online?
I believe online, but I'm not knowledgeable in that section.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. It's very impactful. All right. Thank you to Miss, was it Blaine? Butch. Yes. Gosh, yes. Okay. Last person I think signed up in person is Brian Forg? Forg? Morg with an F. Got it. You may want to use a different word for it.
It's the easiest one.
I guess so.
Hello. All right. Good afternoon, members of the Education Committee. My name is Brian Forg, and I am a school committee member for the Gateway Regional School District and a selectman for the town of Chester. I'm speaking to urge you all to favorably report H 3567 and S 2388 to finally provide a level of assistance to our rural communities that have been fought for years. This piece of legislation is a godsend for districts like Gateway and towns like Chester. As my young constituents alluded to, Chester has significant infrastructural and service needs that have only been exacerbated by aging, faulty vehicles, and crises like the last February's snowstorm and a water main break from last summer. These bills are coming due and quickly, and my town and the communities around us are facing similar compounding issues. As I like to say, the people, parents, and teachers of the hill towns can be given an inch and make it a mile, but more desperately needs to be done. What this bill will assure us is that the necessary investments in rural schools be consistent with what was suggested in the rural school report, and there will be resources to support schools with declining enrollment, and that aid is directed to districts where it is most needed. As I've heard numerous times when navigating the legislative process, there are many diverging and pressing priorities y'all have to tackle. However, our town government and the residents at town meeting have overwhelmingly and passionately worked to make sure that the needs of the students you heard today are paramount, even when they demand some of the highest property tax rates in the Commonwealth, even with all the other urgent problems on our docket. We've pioneered new programs and appropriated at least 50% of our annual budgets toward the success of our kids, including very successful internship programs to support such declining careers as water operators. I know, I should say, I ask you all to show the same commitment our students are showing, that the residents of the Gateway communities have shown, and truly give us the big win that we've needed for decades.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Forgan. Thank you. You said you serve on both the select board and the school committee.
I do.
Both. Wow. Thank you very much for your public service.
And of course, I'm a graduate of Gateway Regional about 2 years ago.
That's definitely a theme of this hearing today.
Yes.
The excellent quality of Gateway Regional graduates.
Absolutely.
All right. On this bill too, I assume. Okay. All right. I think, did we cover everyone who's here in person to testify? Okay. Okay, great. All right. I think we have another champion for rural schools who's with us virtually, Representative Farley Bouvier. Are you there?
Thank you so much, Chair Lewis and Chair Garlick. And I've listened today to hear about the rural school aid. I'm a big supporter of that, though I represent a gateway city. But I support my colleagues in local and state government on that. I'm actually here to talk to you about a different bill. And I think of interest in this bill because Chair Garlick's work with education now, her work on child welfare issues, and her work in Ways and Means. This little bill is at the intersection of all these things. So this is H 3570. An act to fairly reimburse local school transportation of foster children. I filed this with my colleague and a partner in many child welfare issues, Senator Joe Comerford. A little bit of background. In 2015, the federal government passed the Every Student Succeed Act, and part of that gives foster children the right to continue their education in their school of origin if they are placed in a different school district in their foster placement. The new school district the foster child resides in is responsible for paying for this transportation. You can see how this gets complicated. Federal 9E provides the reimbursements to the local school districts for this transportation. However, the reimbursement is complicated and it isn't sufficient to cover the full cost of transportation. In October 2022, a report from Auditor Susanna Bumps outlined this issue and highlighted it as a need of reform. So how are we going to reform this? What this bill does is address the funding gap between the federal government and the local school district by just saying DCF is going to fund that gap instead of putting it onto the local school districts. We just need to have a better way of doing this so it's not an additional cost onto the local school district. I'll be submitting written testimony with Senator Comerford that it contains further data, and I'm hoping that we can work together to help this reform get through. Thank you so much for the time and attention that you give to this matter and all matters in education.
Thank you very much, Representative Farley Bouvier, and look forward to working with you on this issue. Sounds like definitely something we should be figuring out how to resolve. Thank you. All right, I believe Representative Sabados is also with us remotely.
Yes, I am here. Thank you so much.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. And so we're continuing on the theme of rural school districts today, but with a slightly different bill that I filed. H 4019 that I filed with Senator Mark for the communities of Chesterfield and Goshen. This is an act repealing certain fiscal stability procedures in those two communities. I believe someone from the district may have already testified or will be testifying as well about this bill, and we're happy to supply the committee with as much information as you'd like. Effectively, during a fiscal review process, the school district found that they had an account that had been set up years ago. That account is no longer used, but it does contain $37,000 that they would like to be able to use. So in consultation with DESE and the Department of Revenue, it was decided the best course of action would be to file legislation in order to close that account so that they can use the funds for other expenses, fiscal stability provisions that had been needed in the past, no longer being needed now. So this is a slight step up from a home rule petition. It does involve 2 communities, but it is a very important matter to these 2 communities, and it's super hyper local. So we're hoping that the committee will be able to review it favorably and we can move the legislation forward, and I will be available for any and all questions.
Okay. All right, any questions? All right, thanks, Representative Sabadosa, and I think it would be helpful to follow up with us. It was when I was going through the packet for all the bills, I wasn't familiar with this issue before, so I think it would be helpful to just get a bit more information on this issue.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I will send
Okay.
over much more then. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, let's see where we are. I inadvertently may have skipped over Brad Jones, who was going to be testifying on House Bill 4119. I'm sorry about that. I confused you with Representative Brad Jones.
I got my picture taken in front of the office earlier.
Okay, and I didn't see him, so I assumed that Brad Jones was just not here, but then fortunately I was
totally different one.
Corrected. It was a different Brad Jones.
No worries, thank you.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. Chairs Lewis and Garlick, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to appear before you today. Appreciate the time and work that Chair Roy has put into H 4119, which would establish the framework for an adult workforce diploma program for adults 22 and over in the Commonwealth. My name is Brad Jones. I am here today on behalf of Graduation Alliance, an organization with over a decade and a half of experience re-engaging and reconnecting students and adults in 26 states who have dropped out or are on the brink of dropping out of school. We are also currently partnered with DESE for the past 2 years on a program focusing on addressing and combating chronic absenteeism and coaches, students, and families through barriers to engagement in school. In the Commonwealth, more than 500,000 adults, nearly 10% of the population, lack a high school diploma. This legislation proposes a multimodal approach to providing an adult diploma program based on flexibility, accountability, and transparency. The program allows for multiple qualified and accredited providers to offer adult learners flexibility in a brick and mortar, virtual, or even a blended model setting. The program is outcomes-based and operates in a pay-for-performance model. State funds would only be expended when adult learners attained outlined performance milestones such as credits earned, attainment of employability skills certifications, workforce credentials, and certainly diploma completion. Similar programs in other states have realized significant return on investment for graduates and the state's workforce. For example, Michigan implemented this program in 2016 and has continued to grow the program annually. Graduation Alliance serves as one of 16 providers there. The graduate survey data in Michigan shows 68% of graduates in Michigan reported receiving a better job or raise post-graduation. They saw significant increases in labor market participation overall, as well as employer-sponsored health care. Additionally, 20% were enrolled in post-secondary education. Finally, H 4119 aims to equip this population not only with a fully accredited high school diploma, but also with career and technical skills to meet the state's workforce needs. I will be submitting written testimony shortly. I welcome questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And your organization is Graduation Alliance? Is that right?
Yes.
Is that a local organization or a national?
We're a national organization
okay.
in 26 states in
Okay.
this area.
Great. All right, please follow up with us so we can have more information.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks for your patience. All right, we're going to move to now through a few more bills where there's folks here to testify in person. Next one is House 530 and Senate 343, an act establishing an education to career data center. Ben Foreman? Mr. Foreman? Hi, good to see you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lewis, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on behalf of both H530, S343, an act establishing an education to career data center, as well as the complementary legislation, the Student Privacy Data Act. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had 3 of the leading experts on education and workforce data in the country here to talk to us about where Massachusetts stands. And they said, without a doubt, we are the gold standard. We've invested more money than other states in data quality. We have more information on our students and their progression from education to career than any other state. But we lack crucial governance legislation to make sure that we protect this information and that we make the most out of it. I mean, frankly, when I speak to legislators about our education data, I hear frustration that they don't get the information they need. We know from surveying parents that they aren't getting the information they need, and we know from talking to researchers that they love to work with Massachusetts data because it is the best there is, but is it extremely hard and expensive, laborious work to do. And often, by the time they get to the end of the road, their findings, while incredibly valuable, are dated. This legislation would solve a lot of these problems by centralizing the work in one office, an office that's totally independent and objective. So there wouldn't be any questions about who gets priority to work with data. It wouldn't be the agency's individual agenda that's driving data access. It would be a body, a governing board that works together to set research priorities for the Commonwealth and to look at the technology we're building and making sure that it's as efficient as possible and giving legislators access to the custom reports that they need, as well as the public access to scorecards, dashboards, and other useful information in a way that they know it's there and they're able to actually interpret it. So Representative Lippert-Garabedian mentioned the urgency here with the federal funding expiring. We do feel like there are many opportunities to centralize staff and realize savings, and at the same time actually get better information from our data infrastructure. I'm going to submit written testimony as well, but I really welcome the opportunity to share with you about this important legislation.
Very good. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work on this topic. All right. We are now going to move to House Bill 532, Senate Bill 280, an act relative to student and educator data privacy. We have 2 people signed up here in person. Steve Smith is next, and then we'll be followed by Cade Crockford. Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to speak to House Bill 532 and Senate 280. I'm Steve Smith, the CIO of Cambridge Public Schools. This is my 17th year in that role in Cambridge. And for the past 15 years or so, I've been very passionate about student data privacy. Through the work in Cambridge, we were able to expand our efforts around bringing ed tech providers and districts together around student data privacy obligations and expand that across the state of Massachusetts, and then launched the National Student Data Privacy Consortium, which is a nonprofit with over 10,000 school districts and in 34 states and 4 countries. And I tell you all that work and background just to kind of set the stage that, you know, even though the work has started here in Massachusetts and has taken off across the country, we really are still kind of lagging behind when I look at all the districts in the state as far as being aware and meeting their obligations, because today the obligations fall completely on the districts. Without a state privacy law, we're dependent upon the districts enforcing obligations via FERPA onto the ed tech vendors. A law like this one, legislation 532, would put the obligations directly on the vendors and just create a better environment for holding the vendors accountable. So the lack of, the reason we're not doing very well is the lack of legislation, little guidance or assistance from DESE, which this bill would also address. Some of the model states around the country do have state offices that are providing guidance and resources to their districts around student data privacy. That would be huge for the districts in the state. I'm just here to, offer my expertise because I've been doing this work around the country. I want to ensure that Massachusetts steps up and helps all the districts in the state, whether they're the gateway schools or Cambridge. We're all struggling with the same to address student data privacy with the ed tech vendors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate not just your testimony, but your clear leadership on this in Cambridge and well beyond. Just curious, do you know why DESE hasn't, done more to support districts in this space? I'm sure they recognize that this is important. Is it a resource issue? Is it something else?
The few times that I've spoken to individuals at DESE, the response is kind of, there's a great grassroots effort to address it. And yes, that probably is lack of resources and maybe an impetus to do it, but this would certainly make that happen.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Cade Crockford.
Good afternoon. Hello, Chair. How are you? Members of the committee. My name is Cade Crockford. I am the Director of the Technology for Liberty program at the ACLU of Massachusetts. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 532. Not every district has a Steve. We've been hearing today from a lot of people from rural communities in districts where it sounds like even some of the basics of getting an education are not quite where they need to be. And I think the resource issue that Steve just addressed at DESE also applies throughout the Commonwealth, particularly at smaller or less well-resourced schools. So unfortunately, what we have right now is a dynamic where ed tech companies, this is an industry that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars a year, some have estimated, is at an advantage when they work with school districts that don't necessarily have the technology expertise to be able to evaluate claims that are made in terms of service or privacy policies. These are often, as you know, probably as technology users, very wordy documents full of legalese, sort of difficult to parse. This is made even more difficult when the federal landscape around student privacy is woefully inadequate. In fact, in 2011, the Federal Department of Education weakened FERPA as it applies to educational technology with the goal of opening up the floodgates for the use of ed tech throughout schools covered by FERPA. So there are two problems with enforcement that this bill addresses. Number one is that FERPA says that students have no rights to enforce their own rights under FERPA, that in fact the schools are responsible for enforcing the agreements that they make between schools and technology companies. The second issue with FERPA is that even though FERPA is ill-equipped to, and not designed to deal with these digital privacy issues, not once in 50 years has FERPA ever been have the enforcement provisions of FERPA ever been triggered, which is to say a school loses its federal funding as a result of not complying with the federal guidelines. So it's more of a suggestion, really, than a rule book for student privacy. The second issue is related. There's no way for individuals to enforce their own rights if a company violates them. So we've seen in New Mexico, for example, the Attorney General out there took Google to court alleging that Google had violated student privacy in a massive way, got a settlement in that case. There are hundreds or thousands of technology vendors that are working with school districts across Massachusetts. If you have kids, you're probably familiar with Google Apps for Education and ClassDojo, which are two of the biggest ones. I think ClassDojo is in like 95% of classrooms or something like that. But you as a parent don't have any rights to enforce your child's privacy right now in Massachusetts law. That would fall to the Attorney General to enforce unfair or deceptive practices. You would be able to enforce unfair or deceptive practices rights under our consumer protection statute, but that would only be triggered if a company lied to your face about what it was doing. The problem that we have right now is that companies are not necessarily lying about what they're doing because they can essentially do anything, and they are doing a lot with student-sensitive data. So this bill would give parents and students rights under Massachusetts law, privacy rights that they currently lack, and two, the means to enforce those rights through a private right of action.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Appreciate the ACLU's work on this and look forward to following up and working with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. All right. So that brings us to House Bill 3943, an act ensuring language readiness in deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing children entering kindergarten. I know we have several people to testify in person, and hopefully we have the appropriate accommodations. So I think Stephanie Clark is first. Is Ms. Clark here? Did she just step out? We can come back to her. Oh, no. Oh, no, goodness. Okay. I hope she's doing okay, and please pass along our best wishes to her. All right, so then.
She said that she was going to be sending written testimony.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Michelle Klein. Okay. And then next after Ms. Klein will be Barbara Wood, and then Jamie Rivas Robertson. And then this, Ashley. And, okay. Okay.
Good afternoon to both chairs, Chair Lewis and Chair Garlick. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on House 3943. I'm a member of the board of the National Association of the Deaf, and I'm also a member of the Massachusetts State Association of the Deaf. I served on their board for 10 years. I'm currently here. I've moved to Massachusetts. I've been a Massachusetts constituent for 6 years, and I'm a strong educational advocate. Many adults that I've worked with in my career, I've seen have really struggled and have suffered language deprivation, significant language deprivation, and that's impacted their relationships, their education, a variety of other opportunities. I will allow Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who is going to testify, to elaborate a bit more on that. When I worked in New Jersey, I actually worked on a bill, a similar bill that we have here in front of the legislature today. That bill passed. It was related to language acquisition for deaf kids and the Deaf Children's Bill of Rights. So we wanted to be sure that deaf children's education was accessible so that all deaf, blind, and hard of hearing children had accessible education between 0 to 21. And so I am advocating that we see something similar happen here in Massachusetts. There have been about 20 states that have already passed similar legislation, and we would like to see this legislation pass here in Massachusetts. We need to ensure that we can enable, we need to deal with what is an epidemic that we see in our community, in the deaf community, to allow the ability to assess and monitor child language acquisition, to ensure that children are at language appropriate milestone, age appropriate levels when they hit kindergarten, between the ages of 0 and 6. We already have data from other states that show that children at the age of 4 are way behind their hearing peers. And we would like to make sure that we provide services that support young deaf children, toddlers, to avoid them experiencing significant language delay and deprivation. So there are deaf, blind, and hard of hearing children should be on par with their hearing peers. I want to thank you for your hard work on the Education Committee and for your support of our deaf, blind, and hard of hearing children in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very much appreciate your testimony. Thank you, and thank you to our interpreters. Barbara Wood. Is Ms. Wood here?
Barbara Wood is not here.
No, not here today. Okay. All right, that brings us to Jamie Rivas Robertson. And then we'll have Dr. Sanjay Gilardi, and then we'll have Ashley DeRosa Thompson.
Hi, how are you? Thank you very much for having us here today. I'm here because I am a teacher of the deaf here in the Commonwealth, and this is my 24th year working with deaf and hard of hearing children. Almost all of those years I've worked with preschool and kindergarten children. I also worked in the field of early intervention with babies and toddlers who are deaf and hard of hearing. And I wanted to bring to you some experience as a classroom teacher of what happens when a child who has experienced language deprivation enters the classroom very far behind age-expected milestones. What we look at from an educational perspective with regard to language is always whether a child can access the curriculum, which is, of course, the very important thing about school and language. However, we end up having children come to us into our classrooms whose level of language is so woefully behind age-level expectation that they can't even express their basic wants and needs. They can't tell me the names of their family members. They can't ask me for help or to tell me that they feel sick or they're hurt. And so looking at that level of language deprivation, it's easy for people to mistakenly assume that's somehow connected to their deafness or their hearing level, and that's just simply not true. These children have the ability to enter school on a level playing field with their hearing peers, but it's on the system to make sure that we're monitoring their language acquisition, and if we see that it isn't meeting developmental milestones, that we're providing additional supports so that these children have the full potential to access school and an educational outcome as well as professional outcomes on the same level as any other child in the Commonwealth. And I look forward to your support in working with our youngest deaf and hard of hearing children, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Just a question for you. Wouldn't these children be identified, they would obviously be identified at a very young age, right?
Right.
And you said-
Massachusetts
yeah.
is actually one of the leaders in the nation in early identification of children here as being deaf and hard of hearing and getting them enrolled in early intervention.
Right.
And when the children are born here and go through the screening process and enter the early intervention field, often they are monitored. However, we don't have consistent language acquisition monitoring. There's no consistent tool that is used, and there's no data that's been collected to make sure that we're following these children to make sure that their language acquisition is
Okay.
on level. And that's the part that this...
So they may be, but we don't.
They
but we
may,
don't know that.
but maybe not. And then children who are not born in Massachusetts and come here from other places are entering in a different way. So they don't have that early identification.
And would they automatically go on to an IEP, when they're 3, so they can start in the public schools?
So if a
for
child is
preschool?
enrolled in early intervention and then the early intervention transition helps them move into a special education placement to be on an IEP, then yes, that would happen in Massachusetts.
I'm sorry for my ignorance here, they don't automatically qualify to go on an IEP, or they?
They automatically
they
qualify,
okay.
but it also is on the team supporting the family to make sure that the family is aware of those rights and helping transition them into the special education setting. But yes, they do qualify.
They do qualify, okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Let's see, Dr. Sanjay Gulati? Okay, hi, welcome.
I'm a child psychiatrist. 30 years at Children's Hospital, 30 years at Cambridge Hospital. I went deaf myself during my education. The idea came along just in time to save me, make it possible for me to graduate medical school and become a psychiatrist. I thought I would be treating people with a minority language. You can see from watching the interpreter, sign language works just as well as spoken language. Maybe better, we can have chats without disturbing anybody. Third or fourth most used language in the country and has a beautiful history and culture and poetry all its own. The problem is when a child is born, even if identified early, who is responsible for the language acquisition? And the answer is nobody. It's almost Kafkaesque. It's bizarre, the depth of the crevasse that these kids fall into. Imagine you had a child who was born and then not placed on a surface where they could roll over, crawl, sit up, walk, run, climb things. Hold that child until age 5. Now put them down. Is that child going to learn to walk? No, we all have a strong intuition that that child will not. If they reach age 10 and they're dragging themselves across the playground, that's pretty much what we'd expect. That's exactly what language deprivation is. So my claim to fame is originating and researching the idea of language deprivation syndrome, the idea that there's a whole range of outcomes separate from just language, just communication. There's a whole range of outcomes ranging from coordination to empathy to ability to regulate emotions, that are a result of having late or inadequate language acquisition. So why does this happen? The parents think, we want our kids to speak our language, we'll bring them to the doctor. The pediatrician sends them to the ENT gives them a cochlear implant. The cochlear implanter is done when the surgery has healed. That person, in my view, is doing a cosmetic language surgery. We're going to make this person go from being a deaf person who easily uses sign language to being more like a hearing or hard of hearing person who maybe will learn some spoken language. They do not track the outcome, and they take no responsibility for the outcome whatsoever. I come from a family of surgeons. My personal preference would be that surgeons should take this over. But their view is that any hearing that they've given the child is fabulous. So if the child goes on 60 Minutes and speaks 3 words, yay. I'm measuring from fluent language use downward. And by that measure, as you've heard, the majority of deaf kids are way behind. If they have deaf parents, beautiful. If they have signing parents, beautiful. The brain doesn't care what the language is. That's like, what color playground did you play on? Was it red playground equipment or blue? The brain doesn't use any one particular language. But without language, the brain does not build the structures inside that permit us to think. So that many deaf children are essentially in the position of being kids who are carried around. Early intervention is what? 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 times a week? Okay, let's take that kid that's being carried around and give them a hard surface or a playground for 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 times a week. Are they definitely going to learn to walk, run, or play? I mean, maybe they will, maybe they won't. And part of the problem here is the variability. You will hear, or probably you might hear from kids who've had successful cochlear implants. Beautiful. I have no problem with that. That's great. Some people in the deaf community might feel you're taking away the birthright of a deaf person to use sign language, but I'm fine with that. My problem is with kids whose brains have not developed, who essentially are in the position of the kid who was never put down and never learned to walk.
Understand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you have any questions, happy to answer them. This took me years to wrap my mind around. It's not a simple subject.
Indeed. Do you have any questions? All right. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your expertise with sharing that with us today. All right. I believe we have one final person here to testify, Ashley DeRosa Thompson. Ms. DeRosa Thompson.
Greetings, members of the committee and the chairs. I'm Ashley DeRosa Thompson. I live in North Grafton. For 13 years, I've been in the education field and early childhood. And I've worked with hundreds of deaf children, and I'm a mother of a deaf child. And her ASL language is above her age level. She has full access to language. She's lucky, but not that many children have access to the kinds of language she has. I believe deaf children, all deaf children, are provided full language, will develop language, meaning they will have a language which they can build on for English. I have identified the root cause of language deprivation, and I have seen deaf adults in their life having the result of language deprivation. And it's really heartbreaking. I noticed that in the education field, there are lots of gaps. Who takes responsibility? Who does the assessment? Who does the tracking of the language development? And the mental health development for the deaf kids. There's early intervention, 0 to 3, but there's very little from 3 to 22. Deaf adults suffer from a lack of appropriate language. Families are isolated. There's academic struggles, there's suicide attempts, physical abuse, and then a lot of the people end up in group homes. And the life of deaf people who have language deprivation is not normal. And we need to start kids at the very beginning so that they can have equal language to their peers. I haven't seen the number of deaf kids who arrive at school ready to learn are very few. They're quite delayed. They arrive at school at 3, and with the early intervention, they do not have language that is on a par with their hearing peers. There's no required language assessment. We use some for early intervention, but they're not designed for the unique language needs of deaf kids. They're not real scores. They're modified scores, modified raw scores, in order to match. There's a law that says language acquisition will continue to impact our deaf and hard of hearing children's ability, both through their education and profession. And the first 5 years of education are severely lacking. We don't want our children to grow up lacking and being behind in their language development. Almost half of the states in the country have passed similar bills. Thank you for your time, and we hope you will support this legislation for our deaf and hard of hearing children.
Thank you. Thank you for your very powerful testimony. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, that's everyone, I think, who was signed up to testify in person. Did we miss anyone who's still waiting to testify who had signed up? Okay. What we're going to do now, just for the benefit of the committee members and those who are waiting to testify virtually, we're going to just take a 5-minute break, bathroom break, and stretch our legs, and then we will come back and we will start from the beginning of the hearing of the agenda, and we will then go through everyone who has signed up to testify virtually. Okay, so we'll be back in 5 minutes. All right. And for everyone's patience, and so we are going to go now again back through the from the beginning of today's agenda, and we'll be taking virtual testimony again. Or as a reminder, please keep your testimony to 2 minutes or less. All right, so Senate Bill 334, Senate Bill 361, an act expanding high school student access to earn industry-recognized credentials. Steve Sharrock from MAVA. Mr. Sharrock, are you there? If you don't see someone, just let me know. Okay, you don't see him. Okay. All right, we don't see Mr. Sharrock, so we are going to close the hearing on those two bills. House Bill 564, we don't have anyone signed up today, so we'll close the hearing on House 564. House 592, Senate 256, an act to create and expand student pathways to success. We had testimony earlier, and we don't have any more testimony, so we're going to close the hearing on those two bills. Senate 297 and Senate 362, an act to expand dual enrollment for high school students in gateway cities. We don't have anyone signed up, so we will close the hearing on those two bills. House 444, an act to expand the use of career and academic plans. We heard from several state reps on that bill, but don't have anyone else signed up, so we'll close the hearing. House 438, an act to reduce barriers to education and career opportunities. We don't have anyone signed up to testify. We will close the hearing. House 4119, an act relative to adult education and workforce. We heard from Brad Jones on that, and nobody else has signed up, so we'll close the hearing on that bill. House Bill 3756, an act relative to full funding of regional school district transportation. No one has signed up to testify, so we close the hearing on that bill. House 4019, an act repealing certain fiscal stability procedures in the towns of Chesterfield and Goshen. Rep. Sabadosa testified on that. Nobody else has signed up, so we'll close the hearing on that bill. Okay, next up is House 3567 and Senate Bill 2388, an act to provide a sustainable future for rural schools, and we do have a number of people signed up. So first we will hear from Doug Selwyn, followed by Martha Thurber, then Laura Robinson, and then Kip Fonch. Do we have Doug Selwyn with us? Doug left. All right, so if Doug does come back, we'll circle back to him. So we will go to Martha Thurber.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for holding the hearings on these very important bills. I am Martha Thurber. I'm the chair of the school committee for the Mohawk Trail Regional School District. Our district includes 8 small towns in western Franklin County, which is the poorest county in the state. We cover about 250 square miles, and Mohawk Trail is geographically the largest regular school district in the state, and we educate about 900 students in pre-K to 12. The district has seen no meaningful increase in Chapter 70 for more than 20 years, and we have no hope for any meaningful increase coming from the Student Opportunity Act. Our district towns that have populations ranging from 300 to about 1,800 have been amazingly supportive of education, but they are reaching the limits of what they can afford while still providing essential town services. I assume you've all read the excellent study completed by the Special Commission on Rural Schools, which has been referenced here a couple of times. The overwhelming challenges that districts like Mohawk Trail face are clearly laid out there, so instead of reiterating those challenges, I'd like to focus more on what the $60 million in additional and predictable rural aid would mean to Mohawk Trail. It would mean that we could develop robust academic and co-curricular programming in areas such as art, music, and foreign languages. It would mean creating internship and career readiness programs essential to educating and retaining all of our students. It would mean having at least minimal resources to devote to the counseling and tutoring programs that have become essential in post-COVID world. It would mean knowing that we could afford replacements for the student Chromebooks and other technology that we finally were able to acquire with ESSER funds. It would mean our educators and administrators could spend more time meeting students' actual educational needs and less time trying to find ways to keep our financial ship afloat. That would mean easing the sometimes adversarial relationships that have all too often developed between our towns and our schools because of the fierce competition for scarce resources. And it would show a meaningful commitment on the part of the state to reducing the extreme inequalities that exist in the current school funding mechanisms. Zip codes should not dictate educational opportunity. So I strongly urge your support of this crucial legislation. Now is the time to act because the very survival of my school district is at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thurber. Do you happen to know what the total budget is roughly for the Mohawk district?
Yes, it's roughly $25 million.
Okay. And
$6 million of which comes from Chapter 70. That's it.
And thank you. And if the legislature were to fund rural school aid at $60 million, which I know is the recommended amount from the commission, do you know how much that would represent for Mohawk? Have you seen any estimates?
I haven't. If you take the $15 million that was appropriated for FY24, which gives us almost 700,000. You multiply that times 3. Yeah, you get a couple $1 million. That's
actually really, we multiply by 4, right?
4. Yeah, that's right. It's almost 3 million. That's really real money.
Okay, so you're 3 million, and your total budget is 25 million. 25. So it would be more than 10% increase.
It would be more than yes. Yeah.
Okay. So it would be a very significant amount relative to your total budget. Okay. Sorry, I can't remember his name, but I think he was the former superintendent of your district who had a pretty well thought out plan for how the state could support shared services Sort of like almost like a back-end type services that could be taken off your plate and other rural districts and then could be provided by the state. Do you happen to recall who I'm thinking of?
I know it was Michael Boniconti was our
Yes.
former superintendent. I
That's it.
don't recall the specifics of his particular plan for that. No, I don't.
Okay. It would be great, I'm saying this to my colleagues too, if we could track that down, because I know he had a pretty well thought out proposal a few years ago, in terms of, models for providing sort of services so that each district doesn't have to provide that service themselves.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Laura Robinson is next. Don't see it. Okay. Kip Fonch. Kip Fonch, okay. Larry Langford. Larry Langford? No. Cynthia Yetman. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Garlick and Chair Lewis and members of the Joint Committee on Education, and allowing me to circle back on H3567 and S2388. My name is Cindy Yetman. I'm a lifelong resident of Amesbury, Massachusetts, where I worked in the public schools for 36 years, first as a technology teacher and then as a director of technology. I'm also the president of the Amesbury Federation of Teachers, a position I've proudly held for 15 years, and I'm a vice president for AFT Massachusetts. I'm here today to voice my enthusiastic support for these important bills that Representative Blaze and Senator Comerford have filed, which is aligned with recommendations from the Commission on the long-term fiscal health of rural school districts. I had the great privilege of serving as the AFT Massachusetts representative on this commission, which released its final report and recommendations in 2022. My participation in the commission was an eye-opening experience. It was sobering to learn about the challenges that rural school districts face to fund their schools adequately. The commission felt strongly that these challenges must be addressed urgently so that rural schools can move forward on an equal playing field with the hope for a better tomorrow. While Amesbury is not technically a rural district, it faces one of the same central challenges, a sustained decline in student enrollment. For example, over the last 20 years, Amesbury's student population has declined more than 35%. Because Chapter 78 is driven in large part by student enrollment numbers, we've seen Chapter 78 for Amesbury remain essentially flat and even decline after accounting for inflation. For example, this past year, we are due to receive an increase of $110,000, a mere 1.2% rise. The previous years saw similar meager increases. Yet while Chapter 78 has remained flat, school operating costs have not. Inflation is up over 11% in Essex County. Utilities are up over 25%. The cost of private special education services for students we cannot serve in district has increased over 14%. Health insurance costs continue to soar, and on and on and on it goes. These financial burdens fall heavily on the backs of Amesbury residents who simply can't afford further real estate tax increases. We're already spending around $20,000 per pupil and 148% of foundation budget, according to DESE's latest figures. And Amesbury already has sky-high real estate tax rates. In short, the situation is unsustainable. Without state help, we will see devastating cuts in programs and services for our students, including staff layoffs and cuts to course offerings, student support services, music programs, the arts, and other enrichment programs, the very programs that keep many students engaged and coming to school. The bill before you would help fix many of these problems. I am particularly excited about the bill's creation of a declining enrollment fund, which was recommended by the Commission, for which Amesbury would be eligible. This supplemental money would be a lifeline for us. In closing, I urge your committee to give this bill a favorable report. In Amesbury, educators and others fought hard for the Student Opportunity Act. We did so because it was the right thing to do for students from high poverty urban communities who face a disproportionate share of hardship. We fought hard again for the Fair Share Amendment's passage. We also need a helping hand. Passing this bill would send the message that students in rural and declining enrollment districts are also entitled to the promise of educational excellence. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you today. It was well worth the wait.
Great. Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Yetman. Thank you for your service on that commission. Just remind me, Amesbury does have its own municipal school district. Is that right? You're not part of a regional district?
That's correct. We're our own municipality and public school district. Yes, sir.
And you said your enrollment has dropped by 30-some%. So what's the current enrollment in total? Do you know? For
less than 2,000 students here in Amesbury at this time.
So one of the challenges we face in the western central parts of the state is just the geographic distances are so large that it makes it that much more difficult to regionalize. But that's less of a factor on the North Shore, although somewhat of a factor. Why? Let me challenge you a little bit. Why doesn't Amesbury consider entering into a regional district with some of its neighbors?
We have the Triton Regional School District, Senator, and we have the Pentucket Regional School District here, the Masconomet Regional School District, and we also have Whittier Tech Regional High School. So we have our share of regional school districts. We don't foresee cities like Salisbury and Newburyport, where they have access to these other regional school districts, changing their course of accessing those districts and coming together and forming yet another regional school district. We don't foresee that being something that's feasible.
But couldn't Amesbury join one of those existing regional districts?
No, they're all based upon proximity. So each neighboring school district is a part of those regional school districts. Amesbury is its sole entity, as well as Newburyport. So we're not part of those regional school districts at this time.
Could you become part of it? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, not at this time. They have their own ways of calculating the towns in proximity to their school district that participate in their programs, and we're not part of that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. I wish I was as entertaining as the students were, but what a wonderful testimony you've received today, sir. It's my first time experiencing this, and it's been fabulous. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for that feedback. We're glad to hear that. All right, next up is Pam Osowski. Do we see Mrs. No, don't see her. Okay. Patricia Kinsella. Patricia Kinsella. Okay. Karen Foster Cannon. Karen Foster Cannon. Cheryl Stanton? Yes. All right. Ms. Stanton, you're up.
Thank you. You caught me in between my schools, so I am in the car. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. The audio is very good.
Excellent. I have a Wi-Fi hotspot in my truck. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairs Lewis and Garlick and Joint Education Committee members for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Cheryl Stanton, and I am the superintendent of the Mohawk Trail and Hollimont Regional School Districts, where learning and growth is our focus and community and courage is our path. I would like to highlight the very valuable and necessary parts of H3567 and Senate 2388, an act to provide a sustainable future rural schools, but with the 2 minutes allotted, I would like to focus on the need for the $60 million annually appropriated amounts and what it can do for our schools and our children. For Mohawk Trail and Hollimont, rural aid appropriated annually would mean keeping principals in every school building and assistant principals in our largest schools to make sure our schools are safe and that our school cultures and climates focus on ensuring every student is learning and growing. It would mean maintaining our curriculum director to support professional development and curriculum alignment, making sure our instruction is aligned to DESE standards so that all of our students have equitable access to learning, to ensure our teachers have the support to implement best instructional practices, such as the science of reading and new rigorous curricula for improved student outcomes. It would mean maintaining music, art, STEM, physical education, and health instruction so that students receive the broad educational experience our families value and demand. Keeping our athletic director to rebuild our athletic program, a casualty of school choice in recent years, so that students develop knowledge, skills, and confidence as athletes and scholars and participate on the field and in the classroom. social emotional learning supports and curriculum in our classrooms and schools. Post-pandemic, these supports are more urgent than ever. With funding from ESSER ending, rural aid ensures we can continue to provide these. Adequate and equitable funding is necessary to ensure that every child in every classroom every day has the resources to thrive and a school in which they know they belong. Rural funding has and will make a difference in our schools and our communities. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Stanton. So you are the superintendent in Mohawk and Hollimont, right?
Yes.
Is that a superintendent union then? Is that the correct? Would that be the correct term? Or?
No, it's two separate school districts. Hollimont is a pre-K 6, and then Mohawk Trail is a pre-K 12, and Hollimont students join Mohawk Trail at 712. It is an example of a shared services agreement for central office. They share the superintendent, Mohawk Trail and Hollimont. They share the business office through a shared agreement, and it is something that has been very successful for both districts in keeping costs down, especially for Hollimont.
Is that fairly recent, or has that been the case for a long time?
I think it's been the case for a long time, but your reference to the former superintendent Budikani, I am aware that with the shared service agreement between Hollimont and Mohawk Trail being successful, his idea was to bring that further into the region and begin to think about how we can share services for particularly central office, back office sort of tasks. In addition, transportation, which really is difficult to manage in our small and regional districts.
So it sounds like you would be supportive and in terms of trying to provide new ways to incentivize and support shared services?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, it's difficult because, your HR department in a small district like mine is also, your payroll department. Mm-hmm. So, you have to know your employees. So I think shared services can certainly make sense, but there will be some obstacles to overcome. When we think about instruction and shared services in instruction, we have some obstacles with reducing class teachers with the union. That would certainly be an obstacle. We certainly would have an obstacle with not having the same time and bell schedules across multiple regional school districts. So to provide shared services, for example, for AP coursework, where I may have 2 students who need AP chemistry and Frontier or Pioneer may have 3 students, we have to be on the same bell schedule. We have to have a teacher teaching that course to do it virtually at the same time. So it would take a lot of planning, but I do think something that would be viable in terms of sharing the cost of educating students where we have really low incident student numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions? No? All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking time to testify with us today, and I look forward to working with you and your colleagues on this legislation.
Absolutely, thanks for having me, and thanks for your work on this.
All right, great. Next up is Deb Clapp. Okay, Ms. Clapp.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much to the chairs and the committee for hearing this testimony today. I am on the school committee for the Worthington School District. We are a very small district consisting of 1 elementary school. The school is a really important part of the life of our community, and we want to make sure that we continue to provide our students with a quality early education experience. Over the past several years, we've seen a 1% or less increase in Chapter 70 state aid, and we don't anticipate receiving anything from the Student Opportunity Act. Meanwhile, our budgets have increased by nearly 20%. The budget for the school is nearly 50% of our town budget, and in FY23, the increase in school costs accounted for 50% of the increase in town expenses. We're a small rural town, and as such, our ability to raise taxes is severely constrained. And I just wanted to sort of give you a couple of stories relating back actually to what Representative Blais was talking about, just to sort of illustrate the importance of having a consistent and significant amount of state support for rural schools. In FY22, we had a residential placement for a special needs student in our school that cost the district about $180,000. This is about 10% of our annual budget. That cost was to the district. The entire cost was actually split with DCS, so the cost was really double that. Some of it, a small portion, was covered by circuit breaker funds, but circuit breaker funds are paid in the next fiscal year, and so this created a huge crunch for us in the year in which the funds were expended. The student has since left the district, but continued costs of this kind would place a severe burden on the district and on the town. If we had more than one, I don't know what would happen. They really create an unstable situation for our schools and our communities. In another instance, a special needs student who needs to be transported to another district, the van pool, which normally transports these students, doesn't have enough drivers to be able to transport this student from our town to this other district. And obviously we're required to provide transportation. Now the parents of this student volunteered to transport the student, and they're being reimbursed for mileage. These are the kinds of, I just wanted to sort of illustrate for you the kinds of issues that we're dealing with, that this sort of funding would really help us a lot with. And even without these extraordinary costs, our transportation budget is about 10% of our school budget. This bill would help to stabilize our district and allow us to continue to offer a quality education in a rural environment to the young people in our town. And I respectfully ask that you report out favorably on this bill, and I thank you so much for hearing this testimony.
Thank you very much, and thank you for serving on the school committee. I think Representative Peace has a question for you. Representative
Yes,
Peace?
hi. How are you? When I graduated from the Gateway District, obviously Worthington was part of that district. So,
Yes.
and you guys became your own entity. So
Yes.
so are you guys looking to become more regionalized again, whether back with Gateway or other options?
My understanding, and I'm sorry, Representative Pease, I did not live here then, so I don't know exactly what happened. My understanding is that Gateway decided to close the school. We decided the town reopened the school at first as actually a private school, and then they decided to create their own district. And so, no, I don't think that the plan would be to become regionalized again. Our middle school and high school students, we are part of Hampshire Regional. Our middle school and high school students go to Hampshire.
Oh, you do go to Hampshire now, so you're part of that thing. Okay. Well, thank you.
And we have an agreement with them. They provide some of our front office kinds of services, IT and things like that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just following up on Representative Pete's question, so you are a district that consists of one school, is that right?
That is correct. One elementary school.
Okay. Do you have a separate principal and a superintendent?
No, our principal superintendent is the same person.
Okay. But you still have to have presumably other central office staff for just one school, right?
Yes, and we have one full-time person who works in the office at Worthington, and then the rest of those services are provided by Hampshire Regional.
Oh, through that shared services agreement that you spoke of.
And so it's, they do, like, grant writing services are provided by them, a lot of different services.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to become part of a regional district, let's say again, whether that's Gateway or another, would there not really be much of a financial benefit then? Or has that analysis ever been done?
I don't believe that analysis has ever been done. It's never been done in my time, but I don't believe that there would be, as things are now, I don't believe that there would be a benefit to us, to the town.
Assuming you were going to keep that school open, right,
Yes.
in your community, which I certainly understand why that's important to the community.
It is, Mr. Chair, and Gateway back in the day consolidated a lot, and they were going to move the Worthington elementary schools to the new elementary school that was built in Huntington, which is right next to their high school and middle school as well for Gateway. But they wanted to keep their elementary school, which is understandable, but I don't know if it's feasible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know who was speaking there.
That was Representative Peace.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. All
Thank
right.
you.
Next, we're going to hear from Maureen Marshall and Sheila Muir from the Mass Association of Regional Schools. Do we have them? Okay, great. Hi, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Senator. Thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to be heard this afternoon on these important pieces of legislation. Let me first express the association's deep appreciation for the legislative support for increased funding for rural schools that was included in the FY24 budget. This additional funding is a tremendous first step in recognition of the complex situation in which citizens within the rural parts of our great Commonwealth work and learn. Clearly, few probably appreciate that the United States Census Bureau classifies 65% of Massachusetts as rural. The Bureau notes that 80% of the Massachusetts 6.5 million citizens live on 1/5 of the landmass. So when we discuss rural communities, we are not simply talking about a few towns in the western part of the state. No, we're discussing many towns located, some of them sprinkled around across the state, and have very similar characteristics. They have very small populations, a small tax base that provides limited resources. They have low population density, declining populations in most cases. They're generally a limited choice when it comes to cultural activities, medical services, schools, and their regional hospitals are closing several a year. An eroding economic base with few, if any, new economic options are under consideration, a lower cost of living, lower wages, more poverty, an aging population, and a much lower birth rate than most other communities of a larger size. Limited broadband availability, no or very limited access to any public transportation, and lots of open space and natural resources that the federal government and the state would like to see increased. Since currently 1 million acres, 1 million acres within the Commonwealth is either in land trusts or preserved for natural resources. Our very small communities are often burdened by tax-free population, and also because of the fact that a lot of land mass is not taxable. It is preserving the watershed for the Quabbin regional, for the Quabbin Reservoir, and also providing safe and secure watershed for all of the aqueducts that travel from the western part of the state into the city of Boston. So these characteristics not only create tough challenges for those who work and learn in rural schools, but also significant challenges for town officials who must find the financial resources to ensure community needs are met. Legislation H2567 and Senate 2388 that we discuss here today will, if passed, substantially increase the possibility that all students within our schools have equal access to high-quality educational experiences. This legislation, coupled with future increases in rural aid, will ensure that an adequate number of highly qualified teachers are available to fill rural classrooms. Declining student enrollments in rural communities will no longer be viewed as a reason to decrease support, but rather as an opportunity to jointly consider and execute credible solutions supported by proper funding and expert support. In short, we cannot eliminate rural communities from Massachusetts. We should not punish citizens who choose to live or have been left behind in rural communities.
All right, thank you.
Failing to, just to wrap up, what we really need to do also is to address the biased nature of education, highway, Chapter 90, Chapter 70, MSBA, and pilot funding formulas that impact rural communities. And I think I've heard you speak of that yourself in previous times that we've been together. We cannot leave 20% of Massachusetts' population without the support necessary to properly care for its children, its elderly, its infrastructure. So the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools strongly urges the legislature to be supportive of H 2567 and S 2388. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Is Sheila Muir with you, or is,
she's in the group.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
here. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lewis, Chair Garlick, and committee members for the opportunity to testify in support of H 3567 and S 2388. My name is Sheila Muir. I want to thank you for allowing me to testify to advocate for rural students from across the Commonwealth. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools and one of two superintendents who sat on the Rural Schools Commission. It's important to underscore the many benefits of this legislation for all students in the Commonwealth. I know that others will likely testify, including these benefits in their testimony, so I will limit my remarks to rural and declining enrollment districts. Time and time again, the Rural Schools Commission heard testimony that painted a very bleak picture of the reality of rural schools and communities. Many of the same circumstances exist in non-rural declining enrollment districts. Student needs are increasing, but without the benefit of the Student Opportunity Act funding, minimum Chapter 70 per pupil aid is simply not enough. Passing the cost to fill the gap between what students need and what Chapter 70 provides on to the local communities only exacerbates the problem. Rural communities are also in dire straits. Year after year, community services are drastically reduced to balance budgets. The realization that few people are attracted to communities that do not have their own police force, senior center, or elementary school, and lack oftentimes high-speed internet, makes the effort to increase population and economic development seemingly futile. Nevertheless, such efforts are consistently made in an attempt to keep these communities afloat. Rural and declining enrollment districts are not simply wringing their hands and begging for increased funding. Rural Commission testimony made it clear that these folks have been fighting against this tide for years and years. They have increased efficiencies and revenue by changing healthcare plans, reducing bus routes and staff, adopting open source curriculum materials, delaying necessary capital projects, renting excess school space, increasing student fees, sharing staff, closing schools, and exploring regionalization. Despite this, they continue to sink. I can assure you that the increased aid will not put an end to these efforts. In fact, measures to reduce healthcare costs, assistance for regionalization, and MSBA aid are among the many provisions in H 3567 and S 2388 that will provide permanent solutions to the challenges that plague rural districts. Rural districts and communities are drowning. The $15 million in rural aid in the FY24 budget is a life rope. What they need is a lifeboat. I urge you to report favorably on an act to provide a sustainable future for rural schools. This bill would be the lifeboat that provides schools with a consistent funding source, allowing them to build sustainable programs that provide equitable education for their students, make initial investments to create cost savings for years to come, and ease the financial burden on their communities, allowing restoration of local services and increased investments to support economic development and boost tax revenue. Thank you for the opportunity to share my testimony with you today.
Great. Thank you so much, Superintendent Mirin, and thank you for testifying and also for serving on the commission. Very, very much appreciate it. All right. So we have, I think, a couple more people signed up on these two bills. Just a reminder, we do need to please ask you to keep your testimony to 2 minutes or less because we are bumping up against a time limit for our ASL interpreters. So Sean Suhosky, not there? Not there, okay. Todd Stewart, and then last person on will be Linda Dunleavy. So Mr. Stewart, you're up.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Todd Stewart. I'm the superintendent of schools of the Ashburnham-Westminster Regional School District, and I also served as the Mass Association of School Superintendents representative on the Rural Schools Commission. I testified before you not only on behalf of my school district, but also with the unequivocal support of the Mass Association of School Superintendents. For many of our students in Massachusetts, the Student Opportunity Act was truly a game changer, and I applaud this committee and the legislature as a whole for making that bill a reality. Now, to truly have an equitable funding mechanism for all students in our state, we need to address unique challenges faced by our rural districts, challenges that you've heard about extensively through this afternoon's testimony. In short, our rural districts are sparsely populated. They have, in many cases, declining student enrollment, and they do not have the local tax base that some of our suburbs have where they can make up for deficiencies in state funding at the local level. As a result, there is a constant tension of rural districts between cutting needed services and funding very expensive programs. To run an advanced placement class for 8 students is obviously more expensive than to run it for 22. But in many of our districts, the choice is to run it for 8 or not run it at all. I have an AP biology class in my high school at Current that is meeting in an independent study fashion and being supported by a teacher voluntarily during her lunch break. And it's not nearly as dire in my regional school district as you've heard from some of our smaller, more rural districts across the state. One of the reasons why we continue to hear that the Student Opportunity Act did not support some of these districts is simply because it is a student-based formula. And in areas of declining enrollment, the answer unequivocally needs to be the substantial and continuous funding that these bills call for. So I thank you for your continued efforts around this and look forward to full support of this bill moving forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Superintendent Stewart, and thank you for serving on the commission as well. Just a quick follow-up question. You described that situation with only 8 students, not enough for an AP class to be offered, say in biology in the school. Are there not options for students to take courses like that essentially virtually?
There are, and those options are exceptionally expensive on a per pupil basis as well. Okay. So again, the choice becomes, to pay significantly on a per pupil basis, or to not run it. And certainly, the funding would not be a panacea. And in all of our districts, we need to make choices. But at Current, I think that we've explored those. And just if I may, Senator Lewis, I appreciate many of your questions to others about regionalization and shared services. One of the things that was eye-opening sitting on the commission is that of the highest need rural districts, and there are 3 categories. My home district is the lowest of the 3 categories. So again, things are relative. But if you look through that list, the vast majority of those districts have already regionalized or already have a superintendency union. And everyone that I know of is sharing resources. So there are in this bill some great opportunities for the state to support that further, some one-time seed money as folks look at further regionalization. But from my seat and certainly from the Superintendent Association, it's the funding that is first and foremost most important, not we've sort of turned every rock over looking for every opportunities, and at this point it really is money.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay. All right, let's, Linda Dunleavy, is Linda Dunleavy? Okay, and then I believe Carolyn Shores-Ness also is testifying on these bills, but let's go with Linda Dunleavy next.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Lewis. And I'm going to submit what I plan to talk about in writing, which was more about revenues and expenses, and instead talk a bit more about regionalization, since Chairman, you have asked a couple of questions about that. So every town in Franklin County is part of a regional school district already, except for the city of Greenfield. We are a 725 square mile region. Cheryl Stanton, who testified from her car, she manages a district that's about 235 square miles. And so we've looked at everything we can do to tighten belts in our school districts, and we have looked at shared purchasing of textbooks and fuel and supplies and food. Our organization, the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, have just put together a school bus transportation bid for all of our districts as a way to help them save money and think about ways where we can continue to spend our money on our children instead of on stuff. And so we are struggling to keep our school districts afloat and to provide quality education, and really support H3567, Senate 2388. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very, very helpful. Okay, Carol, do we have with us Carolyn Ness? Carolyn Shores-Ness? Don't see it? Okay. I do know who is, not there? Okay. Okay, we don't see her. Last chance, Carolyn Ness, are you with us? Okay. All right, so I think that is going to do it for House 3567 and Senate 2388. So we're going to close the hearing on those two bills. Thank you for everybody's testimony. Do we need to move now to just cover the, okay. All right, in the interest of we only have our ASL interpreters, I think, for another 20 minutes. We're just going to skip over to finish up Bill H3943 and then H466. So H3943, an act ensuring language readiness in deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing children entering kindergarten. Let's see, I believe Suzanne Bedrosian. I'm just calling on the folks first who will be using an ASL interpreter. So is she with it? She had to leave? Oh, sorry about that. Let's go to then Bert Carter. Is Bert Carter with us? Okay. And Ashley Pothier. Ashley Pothier. Okay. How about for Bill H466, Senate Bill 338, Harry Weissman? Okay. Mr. Weissman?
Hi.
Hello.
Chairs. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Chairs Lewis and Garlick and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am testifying on behalf of the Disability Policy Consortium, a statewide disability rights advocacy, policy, and research organization in support of H3943, H466, and S338. In addition to the points that Rep. Doherty and Senator Oliveira made earlier today, H466 and S338 is an opportunity to introduce a new generation of hearing people to American Sign Language. Most deaf people are not able to learn English or another spoken language, but almost anyone can learn ASL. And the more widely used ASL is, the more accessible and accepting our society is for people who rely on the language. Furthermore, we see this as a way to address the state's current crisis level interpreter shortage. To share a brief anecdote, one of my closest childhood friends took one ASL class in high school, fell in love with the language, and went on to become a certified ASL interpreter. And he's currently in Dubai interpreting for a deaf student at the University of Rochester during their semester abroad, an opportunity that student would never have had without people like my friend who were inspired at a young age to become an interpreter. Of course, that's just one example, but this really can go a long way in broadening and understanding and acceptance for deaf folks. As for H3943, it should go without saying how crucial the first few years of a child's life are for language development. As the pandemic has reminded us, children who fall behind in their education are at huge disadvantages compared to their peers. Investing in language readiness for deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing children will prepare them for school and put them on equal footing with their hearing peers for years to come. At DPC, our credo is about us, by us. So not only should people with disabilities get a seat at the table, but we should be driving the conversation and providing input on decisions that affect us. H3943 establishes a standing committee that ensures community members can have that input and empowers MCDHH, a state agency run by and for the community in question, to lead the important work the rest of the bill lays out. I see I'm already out of time, so thank you for your time, and please vote all these bills favorably and swiftly out of committee. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for testifying your patience today. All right, we're going to return to House Bill 530, Senate Bill 343, an act establishing an Education to Career Data Center. We have one more person signed up to testify. That is Brennan Parton. Do we see Brennan Parton with us? Okay. Can you hear us? Brennan?
Thank you.
Oh, great. All right. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much to the chairs and members of the committee for considering this when you have so many other things on your docket today. I appreciate it. My name is Brennan McMahon Parton. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at the Data Quality Campaign, which is a national nonprofit. And as I always say, we just have one line in the sand, and that's that data work for people. And you as a committee have an opportunity to consider how you might do that. Massachusetts, as you may have heard earlier, has long been a data leader. You have the building blocks you need to support Massachusetts in their journeys through education into meaningful careers. But when everyone's in charge, no one's in charge. Pulling together data from across different agencies is hard. We need to acknowledge that. It's hard state work, but it's essential to answering your questions as lawmakers and also for using data to understand and advance quality pathways from education into career, whether you're talking about rural students, students with disabilities, all the young people that you've been hearing about today. And cross-agency data governance, not a cool term, not a super exciting term, but is the best way to manage your cross-sector data. And just to quickly, what that is formal. It has a leadership level body, so meaning your agency heads, and it's responsible and accountable for making decisions in the sunshine about how data linked between state agencies is connected, secured, accessed, and used. And in our 20 years of experience at DQC, we found that the best way to ensure that governance has all of that, has the right people, is sustainable through funding, has the right level of decision making, is through legislation. And I know you have a bill in front of you that's considering many of those best practices that I'll just say again are sustained, provide a clear mission for the system, establishes a data Switzerland, meaning outside of one of the contributing agencies to give it a fair amount of autonomy, the right staffing, an opportunity to provide for data access for people beyond the folks in those agencies themselves. So we're hoping that Massachusetts will join a small but growing number of states and even leapfrog some of the early adopters by ensuring cross-agency data governance.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate you working with us on this issue. So we're going to close the hearing now on House 530 and Senate 343. On Senate Bill 316, we heard all the testimony earlier today, so we're going to close the hearing on that bill. House 532, Senate 280, an act relative to student educated data privacy. We have two more people signed up, David Saleh and Felicia Vasudevan. Okay, all right, David, Mr. Saleh, you're next.
Yes, hello, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm David Saleh. I'm the Director of Youth and Education at the Future of Privacy Forum, a global nonprofit dedicated to advancing principled data practices in support of emerging technologies. Prior to this, I worked as the Chief Privacy Officer at the Utah State Board of Education. So my testimony today will be based on my current role, as well as my personal experience as being one of the few people in the country who's held the job this bill proposes to create. We'd like to first commend you for taking on this important topic. Parents, students, and educators want access to high-quality educational tools that they can also trust will not be misused. When we started our privacy work in Utah, schools were inconsistent with how they applied privacy requirements, and parents often had little recourse for violations. State law helped create structure, transparency, and consistency. Two things that I saw work particularly well in Utah that I applaud you for incorporating into this bill are designating privacy-focused personnel like a chief privacy officer and requiring staff training. You asked earlier why DESE was not providing more support to schools on privacy, and I imagine it is due in part to not having full-time dedicated privacy staff. In most state agencies, there is at best one person who does it along with 4 or 5 other duties. We had the luxury of it being our full-time focus. About a quarter of that time is spent focusing on data exchanges and standards with other state agencies and researchers, the kind of exchanges your Education to Career Data Center anticipates. We spent the rest of our time developing strong relationships with schools and then creating resources that removed burden while ensuring compliance. I'll note that rural schools were often particularly appreciative of the latter. Our law also required that teachers receive training annually on data protection, and we spent a lot of time creating and distributing these materials. I'll note that there are school staff with access to student records besides teachers, and we recommend considering how to ensure that they are also adequately trained. FPF has resources that address much of this in more detail. We also welcome the opportunity to work more directly with the bill sponsor to further refine the bill. I'm also happy to answer any questions you have right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Felicia Vasudovan.
Good afternoon. I'm Chair Lewis and Chair Garlick and the committee. I'm here, I'm an attorney that works for the Education Cooperative Tech, which is an education collaborative established in 1968. We're here to support House Bill 532. Tech has started negotiating data privacy agreements for member districts and then expanded its work, and we now negotiate data privacy agreements for 124 school districts in Massachusetts. We've expanded we represent New Hampshire school districts, Maine school districts, Rhode Island school districts, and Vermont districts. Through our work, we've gotten a total of 12,301 signed data privacy agreements for districts in Massachusetts. And one of the keys to our success in getting so many data privacy agreements is that we've adopted a national agreement that came from the Student Data Privacy Consortium that Steve Smith talked about earlier today in person. That agreement is used in 30 states. Vendors and school districts like this agreement. Is a standard agreement, and so it creates consistency, but we have state-specific provisions in that agreement. Because we represent all 5 states, we've been able to see the positive and significant impact a state law has on protecting student data privacy. Maine and New Hampshire have adopted laws to protect student data privacy in online programs, as well as Vermont. These laws provide school districts leverage when negotiating with vendors to ensure that student data privacy is protected, because school districts can tell vendors that they are bound to the requirements under state law. When that's the case, vendors are more likely to agree to those terms. Given the Massachusetts statute is outdated, Massachusetts doesn't have a similar ability as its neighboring states to point to statutes to require vendors to adhere to particular standards. As a result, Tech is in support of this bill as it furthers our goal to protect student data privacy and is in favor of the provisions that protect our students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That wraps up the testimony on House Bill 532 and Senate Bill 280, so we'll close the hearing on those 2 bills. That brings us to House Bill 609, an act to expand virtual school eligibility for school choice students. We have 3 people signed up. First is Chris Lord, and then Jennifer Omasta, and then Sandra and Owen Fife. Chris Lord.
Good afternoon. Just double checking. Can you all hear me here?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Good afternoon, Chair Lewis, Chair Garlick, members of the committee, and those listening in for a few minutes of your time today. My name is Chris Lord. I'm the Executive Director of the PBD Personalized Remote Education Program, or PBD PrEP for short. I hope to illustrate an issue of inequity in our state with respect to virtual learning that our community hopes you can resolve with Bill H-609. Over a decade ago, the Massachusetts Department of Education provided its citizens with the opportunity to establish virtual schools. Using the internet as a basis for teaching and learning, over 4,000 students are currently engaged with this opportunity, while hundreds have already graduated from our virtual programs. These students and their families embrace this choice for a wide variety of reasons, including an aversion to the decades-old factory model of schooling, the personal expense and time, money associated with travel to and from buildings, a medical or personal health reason, the typically more personalized and self-paced nature of online schooling, an unusual athletic opportunity requiring a special training and schooling schedule, or overseas commitments during the school year for families. As a result of the pandemic, hundreds of students and their families discovered the value of online learning. 7 Massachusetts school districts surveyed their communities and established single district virtual schools based on the laws at that time. 2 more opened last summer. These single district virtual schools only appeared in districts with an economy of scale large enough to make class sizes economically feasible. Springfield, Peabody, Chelsea, Brockton, and other large cities currently have flourishing virtual programs. Sadly, students and families in smaller communities are excluded from these single district virtual schools because the economy of scale does not exist where they live. As we have heard today, they too should not be penalized because of their zip code. As the law is currently written, only students who have physical address in one of the SDVS cities have the choice to be in that city's virtual program. Sadly, even those students in neighboring communities who do school choice into the brick and mortar buildings of those cities, all of them are excluded from the virtual program in that city. In fact, no students in smaller districts without a single district virtual school have the opportunity to learn virtually. We request that the legislature amend the current law to allow for school choice to virtual schools in neighboring communities that geographically border a city or a town that has a virtual school. Working with a memorandum of agreement or other guidelines the committee sees fit to establish, students in the smaller towns surrounding these cities that have a single district virtual school will be able to make that choice for a virtual program. Thank you.
Thank you. So what you're proposing then, you mean is the same way that school choice would work today for physical school buildings, where a student would be able to enroll in a neighboring community, and you're asking for that ability for the virtual schools, the 7 that exist.
I mean, that would be one option. There has to be some more discussion about it, simply because the money follows the student. If the sending district and the virtual school district shares the money, like splits it for some reason, or splits it in some way, that would make it equal. I mean, the reason they put the law in place years ago when they established a single district virtual school option is there would be a vacuum in smaller districts, like we've heard from today, of kids that wanted to learn virtually, and they would lose all their funding to the district that did have the single district virtual school. So the surrounding communities were excluded because the money would follow the kid to the single district virtual school. But I'm suggesting if the sending district and the single district virtual district could share the funding in some sort of split or tuition in format, memorandum of agreement between the 2 superintendents, for example, that kind of thing would allow us to have kids that want to do virtual schools in smaller districts that currently can't, they'd be able to come in to the virtual option.
Why couldn't those students in the districts that don't have their own virtual school, which of course is the vast majority of districts, why can't they attend one of our 2 statewide virtual schools?
They can, but there's a waiting list of, I believe, 700 students to get into those virtual schools. And those virtual schools are also required to have MCAS in person. And I believe they spend about $800,000 to enable them to run MCAS in person. And that's a lot of money that could be dedicated to hiring teachers. And if they're more localized and they're more regionalized around cities that do have single district virtual schools, the sending districts can still run the MCAS exams and the expense associated with them, but the kids can be learning virtually. So if there's some shared financing between the 2 cities, I think that for the 2 jurisdictions, that might be a solution.
Okay. Thank you. This is interesting. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank
All
you.
right. Jennifer Omasta is next.
Chair, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Representative Peace, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump on here because I just had a conversation with my superintendent here, and they have a virtual school in Westfield, and obviously up in the hill towns like the Gateway region, they get a lot of kids that can come down there, but they can't for the virtual school because right now it's not set up that it's allowed. So they're ready to accommodate the surrounding areas with those. And like I went to the graduation last year, and there's one young girl, actually gave birth to a child during the school year, but she would have never graduated if the virtual school wasn't available. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. So thank you.
Great. So thank you, Representative Peace. All right, very good. Jennifer Omasta is next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Omasta. I am a teacher at one of the single district virtual schools. I've been teaching 23 years and I've been teaching for 3 years virtually. And if you told me 23 years ago that I would be teaching virtually, I would have said, you're crazy, right? I think I started my career writing with chalk on the chalkboard. And, here I am in front of a computer each day and interacting with my students for the school day. I just almost caught myself saying just like a real teacher, right? But I am a real teacher. So, I have I teach just like you're saying me now. I have a monitor next to me where I can see all of my students' faces at times, or at other times I can see every one of their screens. So they're on their Chromebook at home and I'm looking at what they're looking at. I can see every keystroke that they type. I often have another monitor where kids can work together in small groups. And I think, one thing that I would add to what Dr. Lord just said is that, it's not just kids, who want to join a virtual school. There are some students who really need this to access their education. So I have students who are successful in this model who haven't been successful in a long time. They may have, gaps in their education because they couldn't attend school because of a health reason, either, short-term or chronic, or a disability or a learning difference. And, for kids who cannot learn in a brick and mortar building, I think it's really important that this is accessible for them. And once you accept the fact that this is really needed for some kids, it does seem very inequitable that it's only available to so few kids in the Commonwealth. So that's why I am in support of this, and I certainly hope that my legislators are as well. I think it's really important to reach some of those kids that we've talked about. I've heard many people speak about, students who are sort of getting left out of education for a variety of reasons, for a disability or some other reason, and we definitely want to catch these kids who are falling through the cracks and who are, in these gaps where we're not reaching kids. I think that's the goal of education, for me at least, and I hope it is for others in this room.
Yes, definitely for us as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have Sandra and Owen Fife with us?
Hi, yes.
All right. Hi.
My camera's being a little strange. I'm not sure why. Thank you, members of the state legislature. My name is Sandra Fife. I'm a resident of Salem, Massachusetts. I'm asking you to support expanding access to district virtual schools through school choice. Peabody Prep has had a profound impact on my son, Owen, who is in the 8th grade. His experience illustrates the necessity for a live remote learning option for children and families of the Commonwealth with unique needs. My son has several difficult health diagnoses, including a weakened immune system, genetic connective tissue disease, and autonomic dysfunction, as well as autism and ADHD. He has severe fatigue, weakness, pain, and other symptoms that make in-school attendance very difficult. When school went to remote learning during the pandemic, it changed our lives for the better. He was able to attend and do well despite his challenges. We live in Salem, which did not opt to have a district virtual school. We tried everything when schools reopened during the pandemic. We tried the Commonwealth Virtual School, which wasn't a good fit for Owen's instructional needs. They only have an hour per teacher that they meet with during the week. It wasn't enough live instructional time, and he had a hard time bonding with the teachers. We tried in school, where he was a lone masker due to his health until he became too sick to attend. The school tried to support him with tutoring at home, but it wasn't enough. We even tried homeschooling, which was difficult for me as a single parent, even though I work remotely. Finally, we were granted a waiver under my son's IEP to attend Peabody's virtual program, Peabody Prep, but only after my son missed an entire year of schooling and had to repeat the 7th grade. As an instructor in higher education here in the Commonwealth, I was trained to teach online long before the pandemic due to my own chronic health issues. I have a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities of online education. I've witnessed firsthand the transformative power of remote learning in meeting the diverse needs of particular students and in creating inclusive learning environments in my own classes. I can confidently attest to the value of district virtual school in providing quality education as I watched my son attend classes there. This program makes education accessible to students who would normally be left out or whose struggles are obstacles to a traditional education. The PrEP program has provided him with a safe and supportive learning environment that accommodates his physical and mental health challenges. He loves school. The program has demonstrated that learning can be flexible, personalized, and effective, regardless of a student's location or health condition. Now Owen has excellent attendance and A's and B's at Peabody Prep, as well as a close relationship with his outstanding teacher, Mrs. O'Masta. Sorry, I'm getting a little broke up here. He feels like he belongs to a community. When Owen cannot get out of bed due to his chronic conditions, he can still attend school with a live, caring teacher. He can learn in a safe environment while he attends to his health needs at home. This option should be available to students in all districts, whether they have health needs or just learn better in an online environment. I would like to advocate for the expansion of this program to school choice, particularly for children and teens who face health and mental health challenges like my son. This would be a significant step towards ensuring all children and teens, regardless of their circumstances, have access to quality education. By embracing live remote learning options, students who face health and other challenges can learn and grow academically while also prioritizing their well-being. This expansion would contribute to a more inclusive and equitable educational landscape where every child has the opportunity to thrive regardless of their health condition or geographical location in the Commonwealth. Thank you for your commitment to providing quality education and for considering the expansion of district virtual schools for school choice. This can make a significant difference in the lives of students who deserve equal access to education.
Great, thank you so much. Did Owen want to add anything?
Yes, please. Good afternoon, well, technically good evening now. State Legislature, my name is Owen Fife, and me and my mom are here to support Proposition H609, not 869. I go to Peabody Prep, and I'm here because nothing else works for me. My physical body doesn't usually cooperate with me, and that's part of the reason why I love this place. It's accessible. When I was in 7th grade 2 years ago, I got sick to the point where often I couldn't attend, and that was just the start. At later points, I couldn't go to school at all. I couldn't get out of bed. About a month before summer break started, I came to the virtual school, Peabody Prep, and I've had almost perfect attendance since. Why? Because if I can't get out of bed, I can still attend, participate, and learn. In this place, I'm not as absent as much. I get good grades. At the end of the day, I ask you this. Why not let others who normally can't learn due to physical or mental illness come to this haven of an online school? Or, even better, let anyone who wants to attend from different districts join. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, and really glad to hear how this has been such a good fit for you, Owen, and very happy to hear you're thriving, and also very impressed that you're taking this opportunity to advocate on behalf of other students, you know, like yourself, who could really benefit from a virtual school like yours. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you. So we're going to close the hearing now on House Bill 609, House Bill 3570, Senate Bill 244. We're going to close the hearing on those two bills. House Bill 584, we don't have any testimony. We'll close the hearing. House Bill 472, we don't have anyone signed up. We're going to close that hearing. Senate Bill 283, we don't have anyone today, so we'll close that hearing. House Bill 570, Senate Bill 330, also don't have anyone else signed up, so we'll close that hearing. House Bill 3568, we don't have anyone signed up, we'll close that hearing. House Bill 512, an act to allow for school districts to collect a fee associated with non-resident pupil transportation. We do have Carolyn Shores Ness signed up, and I know we called her earlier, just giving her one more chance if she is there with us. Carolyn Ness? No? All right, so she'll have to submit written testimony, and we'll close the hearing on that bill. House Bill 3943, an act ensuring language readiness in deaf, blind, and hard of hearing children entering kindergarten. I believe we've heard the testimony from everyone. Thank you to our interpreters today. So we'll close the hearing on that bill. And then lastly, House Bill 466, Senate Bill 338, an act to promote the inclusion of American Sign Language in the Commonwealth's public schools. We have heard from everyone who signed up on those two bills, so we'll close the hearing on those bills. And I think that brings us to the end of the hearing. I'd like to welcome Representative Donahue to the hearing. Nice to see you. All right. Without further ado, that concludes this hearing of the Joint Committee on Education. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr.